Good morning, Murder Church. What's up? Getting in here, getting set up, getting ready to come on right now. Thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate it. Please like this, share it out. Let people know that you're hanging out for week 4 of the Phil Spector murder trial. Going to be going through a couple hours of this today. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Let's rock.
Let's rock.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome in here, Murder Church on the air. Thanks, everybody, for coming in here. Appreciate it. Yeah, we are going to be continuing this wild, long trial that we have started with Phil Spector, a Hollywood music mogul, an elite figure that killed a struggling actress. Her name was Lana Clarkson. She was making some B movies at the time and had gotten a regular job and went home with Spector one night, unfortunately, and she ended up dead. And right now we're in the first trial of Phil Spector, and it's been a doozy so far. We're super early in. This is the week 4. We did a special episode on Tuesday, so make sure you check that out if you did miss it. You do not want to miss any of these. And I may continue to do some random episodes on Tuesdays like that. It kind of works out. Let me see if I can help this right here. See if I can get my chat going. Yeah, welcome in, everybody. Thank y'all so much for hanging out. I appreciate it. And yeah, we're going to jump right in here. Let me see who's hanging out this morning. First of all, also, let me get the chat in here. I think I've got... Hold on. Boom. Boom. That way we can chat it up while we watch. There it is, coming through. That's what I'm talking about. Fix the Botrix. And who we got through here this morning? Oh, Viv coming through. What is up, Viv in the house? I know she's here for some bells. Shiraz in the house. Justice for Justice in the house. Miss Dina in the house. Defense Attorney Meow. Dizzy's in the house. Law Nerd Amber's in the house. Jay on a new account in the house. Go follow that account right now. That's going to be a fun one. I have a feeling. What was he saying here? Was looking for a place to see Alan Jackson as a young prosecutor. Anyone know where I can find that? That's right here, baby. You're in the right place. Welcome in here. Who else? Sweet Lou hanging out. Drew's in the house. Hope everyone had a good weekend, guys. Seriously. I had a pretty crazy day yesterday. Yesterday was crazy. I don't know if anybody saw my Twitter feed, but I went down to a it's called the Taste of Appalachia. It was a bunch of small businesses on a main street in a town where I live close to. Not in the town I'm at, but it was a little bit down the way. And man, they had some good food. They had some fried chicken that was country. I had collard greens, which are absolutely amazing. Cornbread. And then I went down the street and I had a second dinner, which I think I ended up having a baked potato on that first one as well. Then went down the street and had a burger that was absolutely amazing. I know people saw the pictures of that. With some bean salad that was incredible. I think it was called, the title of it was like Texas Caviar. The best Texas caviar, which I'm going to try to replicate and make with the recipe the guy was telling me about. And then went up the road and had some chicken noodle soup. So yeah, I had a lot of food yesterday and I probably went a little bit too hard. But yesterday was awesome. Yesterday was sweet. 3 dinners, baby. I wasn't messing around. We getting crazy. Good morning. Where's the pickles? Get in here. All right, yeah, so folks come through. Let me start off
Murder Church. Dead anyway, man.
Without that. I gotta take that one off. I put it on the very last possible selection of my stream deck, and I'm always at the very end, so when I start hitting this fucking button, get in here. Hit that like. Thank y'all so much. Appreciate it. Got 4 people on X. 4 people on the X machine. Welcome over on X. Appreciate it, guys. And everyone here on YouTube, really appreciate it. Thank y'all. You guys are awesome. I was hanging out on Feral Friday, huh? What a great movie that was. And anybody that's on Patreon is going to be getting Chopper that we watched a couple of weeks back, and that is exclusively available after today on Patreon. And that was a wild ride. So, all right, guys, let's rock and roll. Let's get in here and see what this wild-ass trial has in store for us today. I think we're right here. Gregory Diamond, who claims Spector's lawyers withheld evidence, takes the stand outside the presence of the jury to start off. So what are these sons of bitches withholding? What are they withholding? Let's get in here. Judge Bruce Willis is going to let us know what is.
Mary Jane,
Man, I hit the wrong one again.
I look like somebody that would smoke.
I'm co-hosted by Chappelle today. I was trying to hit this. Let's go, guys. Oh, let me get this out. That would probably be helpful for everyone, including me.
Abramson, the one that you alluded to, which had to do with a demand of Mr. Shapiro to produce a piece of evidence, and I guess this was the subject matter of a court hearing. This was the hearing that you've already had at some point in some other courtroom?
Well, let us say it's the hearing we tried to have in another courtroom in May of something or another year in Alhambra.
All right.
Oh, remember last week? I need to cut last week's ending off. Last week's ending got spicy. There was a lot of arguing going on. This lady that I have not seen until pretty much the ending of the last video that we watched. I guess she's part of the defense team here. Another lawyer, maybe. I don't know, part of the team. But there was some spiciness going on with these arguments.
This is Mr. Sortino's
last Tuesday.
February 17th.
Yes, it's just been refiled. All right.
It got continued, and I know I think it was in May, wasn't it? And Mr. Dixon was there.
In any event, I just wanted to make sure that I had.
Exactly.
All right.
Precisely so.
At the present time, Mr. Worksman, you're present with your client?
I'm present with my client, Judge, Mr. Diamond.
All right. You've requested of me that I tell Mr. Diamond what the scope of the hearing is. Is that correct?
Among other things, yes.
Well, Mr. Diamond, you are here for the following reasons. It is my understanding that you contacted either the district attorney's office and/or law enforcement with information that you thought needed to be brought to their attention because of the fact that you had worked with a prior attorney in this matter. No one wanted to speak to you directly from the prosecution team because of the concern that it might deal with privileged information. Pursuant to their request, I appointed a special master, Professor Levinson, to oversee this along with the Los Angeles Police Department. She has made a report to me which indicated that as far as the only thing that we are concerned with, since we have no interest in getting into privileged communications, however, you have made an allegation that could be viewed as moving or manipulating or tampering with a piece of physical evidence, and that is not privileged if it is true. You're being called here today is solely to deal with that issue as to what your observations are concerning this piece of evidence that you brought to the attention of the authorities to find out what, if anything, happened, what, if anything, was done, if such items exist at all. And that's the sole purpose. You are a witness here. You are not a target. You're not anything else. You're a witness. You have put yourself into this case. You have made yourself a witness, and that's what you're here for. I have no problem with you hiring counsel. That's your business, but no one has given me any basis to believe that in any way there's any criminal liability on your behalf. There is none. You're a witness. You're here to testify as to observations that you made. Those observations may well be challenged. In fact, they will be challenged by the defense. That's what you're here for, sir.
Your Honor, I just comment about something that you just said.
Yes, sir.
What your
well, that was bullshit.
Connote a form of immunity.
I'm not giving him immunity. He has the same responsibility as any other witness who takes the stand to be truthful when placed under oath.
Judge, if he chooses not to testify, you know, Your Honor, as you talked, most witnesses appear before a
And another
jury
person is
without
saying,
a,
who are these people?
without a pre-trial.
How many lawyers can you have?
Full-blown in public. So to call this the ordinary witness is not entirely accurate. Most witnesses end up based on statements or volunteered statements interviewed by the defense and the prosecution, who then make a choice. Either we'll call them or we won't call them.
That's why this is so
it's
long.
not
This
fair
is
to
ridiculous.
characterize this is an ordinary proceeding with an ordinary witness.
So much.
And I
What the
must
hell?
again,
What's what they're here for.
Look what I said in your chambers. We were misled as to why we would be here today. And the special master, whose comments I've seen in the paper on this trial, assured me that she would let me know what was happening, would keep me informed. I never heard from her again. The prosecutor who called me Monday and asked me to accept the subpoena told me nothing except the judge wants to talk to you. Now, Judge, I really, under these circumstances, if it takes me stepping down as counsel, I'll do so. But I don't think what's happening here is fair to Mr. Diamond, and I don't think it's that important in the overall scheme of things. And I think he's entitled to reflect on what's happened here today. He was brought up here, and if I'm responsible for misleading him, I apologize to him and to the court. And you know, Judge, Lori Levinson couldn't thank me enough for interceding and getting the statement straight. But she never called me and told me that this would happen the way it's coming down today.
She couldn't have because she didn't know. Number one, she's out of town. Number two, I haven't spoken to her because it would be inappropriate. She did the job that she was supposed to do, which was to oversee this matter. She had no idea that this witness was going to be called because I haven't spoken to her since she submitted her report to me. So don't, excuse me, I let you be heard. Don't impugn Professor Levinson. There's no reason for it, number one. Number two, witnesses aren't entitled to time to reflect, and witnesses also aren't entitled to counsel unless I feel there's going to be a Fifth Amendment potential issue, which we've decided there is no issue. If you want to be here, that's fine. If you want to sit by the side of your client, that's fine. But if you want to step down, that's fine as well.
So we have a lot of rich people that have a lot that have their own lawyers in here. I'm guessing. I don't know who the fuck Gregory Diamond is right off. Associated with this in some way, who claims, this is again outside the presence of the jury, who claims Spector's lawyers withheld evidence, takes the stand outside the presence of the jury. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. But
Judge, by we have decided there's no Fifth Amendment. Please don't include me.
I'm not including you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, you can proceed as you wish. Sir, do you have any other questions?
Well, Judge, I'm going to step down.
That's
because
fine.
I've done the best I can, and I think under the circumstances, Mr. Diamond should be given time to obtain counsel and to reflect on what Your Honor has done.
That's fine, sir. And if I think there's any Fifth Amendment implications, he can either contact you, we'll stop the proceedings, or he can hire other counsel. That's up to him. He's a witness in this matter.
All right, now what? Well, Your Honor, given the admonition that you said you were going to, or if you have.
I just did.
Okay.
Call your first witness.
Greg Diamond.
All right, sir. Step forward to be sworn, please.
I'm going to object to Mr. Diamond speaking unless he's under oath.
Well, if you want, I'll allow him to address me.
Judge, thank you.
Mr. Diamond, what did you want to say?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. I would like to ask you if...
This is David Cross. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a Hollywood trial played by actors. Why is David Cross in this courtroom right now talking to Bruce Willis?
It would be possible to obtain counsel and to ask for a continuance in this matter.
At this point, sir, no. There has been no basis given to me to do that. I've indicated no one, either in your statement or anything presented to me, has indicated any possible Fifth Amendment implications in your testimony. You are a subpoenaed witness, or this actually not subpoenaed. You came in because your counsel, in essence, accepted a subpoena on your behalf or agreed to have you present. You're now present. You have been called as a witness. Your duty is now to testify, sir.
Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
It's David Cross!
It wasn't, to my knowledge, that this was going to be the type
We
of
can't see his
proceeding
face.
that was
It
going
looks
to
like
take
David
place.
Cross. It sounds like David Cross.
today,
Sir, let me just say something.
but I appreciate that.
Whatever happens, you put yourself in this case, sir. No one put you into this case. You approached the authorities on your own. You said you had information. You are a witness. You have been brought to court as a witness, and now you've been called to testify. Step to the stand, sir, to be sworn.
Yeah, this judge is awesome, Bo Pete.
Please raise your right hand to be sworn. You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you. Please.
This is David Cross. I can't.
Mr. Worksman, did you
Okay,
want to remain
finally, we got a
anonymous?
face.
I'm unclear.
Well, Judge, I really, I suppose I have an obligation. He came up under, I guess I'm flying under false colors. This is the last thing that I would anticipate happening, so I appreciate Your Honor allowing me to stay.
You can stay. Would you like to sit in the jury box in case he needs to talk to you? All right, thank you. You may proceed.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Gregory Diamond, Gregory, Diamond, D-I-A-M-O-N-D.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Diamond. I should tell you, my name is Pat Dixon. I'm a Deputy District Attorney. I'm going to ask you a few questions this afternoon. I'd like to invite your attention back to February of 2003. Were you employed at that time?
That is the answer to that question cannot be answered with a yes or a no.
So you may explain if you excuse me, you may explain if you wish.
Son of a bitch.
I, at that time, in 2003, February?
Yes.
And what date?
Well, let me be more direct. On February 4th, 2003, did you go to Phil Spector's house at 1700 Grandview Avenue in Alhambra?
I believe that was the exact date. It was, yes.
Sometime in the late afternoon?
Yes.
Were you employed on that date?
Employed in what capacity?
Were you working with Bob Shapiro that day?
What's going on right now?
I, at the time, was preparing for the bar examination. I had been employed in the past.
Why is he talking in slow motion, bro?
At that
We're on normal speed.
moment in
What the?
time,
What is happening?
I was
semantics is 100% right. Wild side. Welcome in here.
I mean, I
Also,
was there working
what the hell?
in some capacity.
Wait, does he have a different wing on this time? Did I miss it?
But I was
Son of a
taking the bar
bitch!
exam.
David Cross done fucked me up.
Prior to that date, had you been a law clerk for Mr. Shapiro?
Yes.
Could you give us the approximate date of that?
I can't see him. Ah!
I was I was an intern and a law clerk.
Now, on the date I suggested, February 4th of 2003, at Phil Spector's house, did you go to that location with other people?
Yes.
Who?
Robert Shapiro. Would you like me to name all the individuals?
All the names that you can remember.
It was his defense team at the time.
And those names, who were they?
Yes.
May I take the Fifth Amendment?
No.
As far as
You're to answer the question as to who was present. There's no basis for claiming the Fifth Amendment.
in any of the.
You are to answer the question as to who was present.
Yes,
Dude, it was spicy at the end of last week also.
Sarah Kaplan, Bill Pavlik, Michael Bodden, Henry Lee, and other individuals that I do not know the names.
The other individuals, let me just ask you, do you recall Jay Romaine, a private investigator?
I do not know the name. At this time, I do not recall.
How about a Stan White? Does that sound familiar at all as a private investigator?
I do not know. That name is not familiar. I do not recall.
Of the people whose names you don't recall, and then we'll talk about the ones that you do, were they, to your knowledge, did they appear to be investigators? Was that their role at the scene?
Yes.
He said yes. Based on that, you can cross-examine. The objection's overruled. The answer will stand.
You mentioned Bill Pavlik, correct?
Yes.
Was it your understanding that he was a private investigator working for Bob Shapiro?
Yes.
And Sarah Kaplan, who was that person?
She was an employee of Mr. Shapiro.
A member of the bar?
Yes.
And you mentioned Dr. Bodden?
Yes.
And he was there as an expert to assist?
Yes.
How about Henry Lee? Do you recall Henry Lee? Let me first ask you, withdraw that and ask you, do you know who Henry Lee is today?
Yes.
Did you know who he was in February of 2003?
Yes.
Was he present at the scene at
Yes.
some time? Yes. And was it your understanding that when you went to Phil Spector's house on that day at that time that Robert Shapiro was representing him?
Could you repeat the question, please?
We need the.
Went to Phil Spector's
need the-
house on the day
the
and
wig.
time suggested. Was it your understanding that Robert Shapiro was representing Phil Spector?
Yes.
He was his lawyer. When you first arrived, were there members from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department there?
I do not know if they were from the LA Sheriff's Department.
Did it appear to you that there were members of law enforcement at Phil Spector's house when you and the rest of, as you've characterized it, the defense team arrived?
There were members of there was law enforcement. There was law enforcement there present, yes.
Without telling us what was said, did it appear that there was some conversation between Bob Shapiro or other members of the
I'm feeling that.
and the
I'm out of
members
coffee.
law enforcement?
I had my last bit of coffee.
Yes.
I'm an idiot. I put my alarm this morning to be like up a little bit extra early so I could go get a coffee. And that didn't fucking work because I was up to like 2 in the fucking morning. I was like, nah, man, I need these extra 30 minutes of sleep. No, I want the coffee. There's no winning.
And shortly after that, did members of law enforcement leave Phil Spector's house, leaving the defense team and you there alone?
Yes.
Let me just digress for a moment and ask you a couple questions about things that happened just recently. About 2 weeks ago, did you call the Los Angeles County District Attorney's
That's
office?
hilarious.
At 974
Damn, I missed him. Did I miss him?
3800 after 5 o'clock one evening?
Answer the question, sir.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, right?
I don't
Which I
recall
literally just
that
learned what
phone
is
number.
because of the Kieran Reed trial.
But you do recall calling the LADA's office?
It's true, Donna.
Yes.
And did
Truth.
someone, perhaps me or perhaps Mr. Jackson, answer the phone and have a short conversation?
Objection, calm down.
Sustain. You could break
Did
it up.
someone answer the phone after 5 p.m.? That might surprise some.
The answer is yes.
And after that, did you have a conversation with eventually a deputy district attorney who identified himself as Alan Jackson?
Yes.
Let's return to February 4th, 2003. How long were you there with the rest of the defense team?
I don't recall how long we were there as far as,
Was it 10 minutes, an hour, 3 hours, 5 hours? Do you have any estimate?
it was throughout the entire evening.
Need him.
And without revealing any
We'll get him.
conversations
Don't worry,
at
he's
all,
coming.
Could you tell us what, if any,
Yeah, he's not in
was
there.
your role
That
there?
was no. Okay, see what somebody said. They asked if he was the person with the curly hair.
Entire evening.
No.
And without revealing any conversations at
I
all,
wish that was
could
his
you
wig.
tell us-
Oh my god, I wish that was his wig. No, that's someone else. That's a lady that was arguing at the end of last week that got spicy with the judge. Oh, I wish to God that was his wig this week.
What, if any, was your role that evening?
No.
It might be.
I wish it was.
The court's going to make a finding unless somebody has
God.
other information.
That would have been
He's a member
amazing
of the
wig.
defense team, and therefore any conversations
Goodness.
would be privileged, except those, observations that we're here to talk about, which are not conversations in any event. Let's just try to keep it as close as we can.
And if I could, I'm
Yes.
merely trying to establish that he was there observing, or maybe he was off in the corner sleeping. I don't know.
Your Honor,
All right.
just to
Yes.
clarify my objection, what they were doing is also privilege.
Right.
Unless it.
I understand, but just the fact that you were present and you were part of the defense team, is that correct? If you work for, in any fashion, a defense attorney, you are part of the team. You don't have to be an attorney, you don't have to be an expert, you don't even have to be compensated if you're there to assist the attorney. Were you there to assist Mr. Shapiro? In any fashion?
It's not a trick question,
I was
bro.
there. I was present. And as far as assisting in any
If I'm ever asking anyone, were you there, and they start with, I was present, and then I'm going to fight you physically in real life. We're going to have an old-fashioned duel.
capacity,
Fuck.
with all due respect, I don't, could you elaborate on any capacity?
Oh, I'm leaving. I'm out of
Were
here.
you doing anything to help?
Bro!
I was not in a working, I was not in a working capacity.
What is happening, y'all?
When I was
I'm so
there.
confused.
Well, with all due respect to the objections, one of the things to determine whether anything is privilege is whether a person who doesn't have a right to claim the privilege as part of the privilege holder's privilege, and I know I've said privilege about 4 times, but I think you know what I mean.
Dude.
I have to find out what his role was. So with all due respect, Mr. Brunon, we have to find out if he holds a position of privilege.
Your Honor, I would submit that his idea of why he was there is not the controlling idea.
And you know what? Other evidence or other witnesses
For
are
real.
not going to make it. I'm not going to base whatever ruling I might make or any holding I might make solely on his determination. I agree. But his understanding, we may be able to, shorten this up. We may not. I'm going to ask him what
Brooklyn.
his role was, and I think that's appropriate.
Well, Your Honor,
I don't think that's privileged. If a person, you have a third party of any, Mr. Brunon's pretty able to handle himself.
Then why not want the answer to handle with it?
You want to confer for a second? You may.
Yo. Welcome in here, everybody. Please hit that like as you come in. Appreciate it. Helps me out.
I mean, his perception is irrelevant. Why don't we get to the point of the evidence and not...
Unless, if the people are conceding that this...
No, we are not conceding.
Okay, then we need to know what he views his role as, and then obviously that's not controlling.
Well, see, here's the problem. I said earlier, we don't know where we're going. There's no...
And I understand that, but the bottom line is, I want to know what his understanding of his role there. That's that simple. I don't believe that's privileged. It's his state of mind.
Their strategy is literally, if we keep this trial going for the rest of Phil Spector's life, his entire existence on planet Earth, he won't have to go to jail. I think that's their strategy.
As to why
that's
he was
that's
there.
their theory.
I'm
That's
not
where they're
asking
at.
for any conversations, all right? Sir, what was your understanding of why you were there? Quite simply.
I was more of an observer.
Did Mr. Shapiro ask you to observe?
No.
Okay. Did anyone ask you to observe?
Using the word observe?
Fuck! Fuck everything! What is happening?
What was your understanding of why you were there?
My understanding was...
English! Do you speak it?
To really observe.
I've
was
got to
not
get something
going
in me.
on this
Wow.
with any intention of having to do any particular job. As I was coming from studying to take the bar exam that same day, really I was invited to go along, to be there.
And were you there to do anything you might be asked? Would that be fair, if you were asked to assist?
I was originally asked to go not to the mansion. Originally, I was asked to be at Mr. Shapiro's office. That was the original thing.
All right. I'm satisfied unless something else comes up, and you can
Good
argue that
God.
depending upon what other witnesses testify. At this point, we're going to assume he was there in a privileged capacity. You may proceed.
Can I ask him one or two more questions?
We'll see. What are the questions?
Okay. You said that you were studying for the bar. You were studying for the February bar at that time? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so this was, as I suggested to you, February 4th of that year. So you were in the middle of studying for the bar exam. Last 3 weeks before the bar.
That's right.
And is that what was occupying all of your time at that point?
Absolutely.
Prior to that, prior to studying for that February 2003 bar exam, you'd worked for Bob Shapiro.
Yes.
But at the time you were studying for the bar exam, you were no longer working for him. Is that correct? Were you working in a paid capacity at that point in time?
Were you drawing a paycheck, sir?
I did receive paychecks.
Last question here, and then I'll move on, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Before you arrived at Phil Spector's house that day, did someone say to you, hey, come along, this might be interesting to watch? Or words to that effect?
I'm going to sustain the objection. This may get into privileged material. I'm satisfied, and you know what? Eventually, Mr. Shapiro's here. If he does testify, I'm sure we can find out what his view was. I'm satisfied there's enough here, given his prior employment, working for Mr. Shapiro, who was present at the scene, that anything that was done in front of him was not intended for public dissemination. All right?
Thank
you may
you, Your
proceed.
Honor. Thank you. Before we got into that area, I think I was asking you if you could estimate for us approximately how long you were there at Phil Spector's house that evening.
Bro.
As far as making a determination on the possible amount of hours that we were...
But were you there for an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours? What's your best estimate?
For an estimate only.
Yes.
It could be 3, maybe more hours that we were all there.
All of the people that you've named. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
At some time during that period of time, did you notice, observe someone there pick up a small piece of evidence, perhaps a part of a tooth?
Right, sustained. Just, did you see anyone pick up anything?
Your Honor?
Sir?
I'll ask again.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure I know what the answer is, but
Well, you
may I
feel-
ask it
Jesus
again?
fuck.
Certainly.
May I assert my Fifth Amendment privilege at this point?
Not based on anything I've heard, sir. There doesn't appear any basis for it.
Would it be possible to have a continuance in this matter for this specific
What is the fucking
what
problem?
we're opening up here?
No, sir. No, sir. Unless,
May I talk to this?
yes, if you want to, if you can tell Mr. Worksman and he can communicate to the court as to where some privilege might
Bro.
lie, I'm happy to consider it.
What is going on here?
We may be coming into something similar to a perjury trap. This gentleman's made statements to law enforcement and others. If he now says something contradictory, he's placed himself into a position where he is subject to prosecution.
No, the only thing excuse me, speaking to law enforcement, it's not a federal rule. He doesn't, if he, this is pure hypothetical. Let's say, for instance, he said something that was not truthful to law enforcement, but he gets up here and he testifies truthfully. That's not perjury, and there's no crime as opposed to a federal statute where you cannot lie to a federal officer.
I'm talking about the other way around, Your Honor. I'm thinking of 148 of the Penal Code. If you make a false report to an officer, you're subject to prosecution for that. And
You know, Mr. Renata, if you'll let me, and with all due respect, let me worry about the witness's Fifth Amendment concerns, because I sometimes one might be concerned that your concern for him is not your concern for him, if you understand what I mean. It wouldn't be the first time such a thing has happened.
Your Honor, I'll bare my soul, I couldn't give less anything for him.
Okay.
The fuck?
Any part of a rat's anatomy, I know. Okay.
What is happening in this fucking trial?
While we're waiting,
Yes.
the question that was posed, did you see anybody pick up anything that's too broad? We would.
No, it isn't, because first, I don't believe it's too broad. We're trying to tread very carefully here. I think it's
That's why this is so long. Every single question is going to be picked apart, and the judge is going to have to explain himself over and over and over.
I'm going to allow it.
Goodness gracious.
The allegations against one person.
Right.
For the bar. So anyway, that's
Let's see where we are here.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All
I
right.
think that was actually the court's question.
We'll find it. Just hold on a second. Sir.
Judge, to the extent Mr. Diamond is testifying now, it's because you told him he doesn't have a Fifth Amendment right.
As long as he testifies truthfully.
And I assume-
Everybody's obligation.
And I assume if he does have a Fifth Amendment right and he's forced to testify against it, and the court made an error, that he's covered.
I would agree with you.
Fine, thank you.
All right. Sir, are you ready to answer the question? Did you see someone pick up anything?
I'm so sorry, Your Honor. I apologize.
Sir, I'm going to give you, you're a witness here. Now, I'm trying to be as generous as I can in allowing you to occasionally ask questions so that perhaps it gives you a better understanding why you're here. I am not going to engage in a colloquy with you, sir.
Judge.
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
Dude.
When you are asked a question, you are going to answer the question. All right? It's that simple. And let's put this as a ground rule right now. Do you understand, sir?
Yes, Your Honor, yes.
All right. Re-ask your question, and we'll see where we go from there.
While at Phil Spector's house on February 4th, 2003, did you observe someone pick up what you believe to be a piece of evidence that caused you some concern?
Objection compound.
The objection is overruled. It is the heart of the matter. Everyone is clear about what we're talking about. And this is a statement from the witness. The defense is in possession of it. It's not vague to anyone. You may answer the question, sir.
There was an item.
Describe it, please.
It was, do you want me to describe I'm going to give you a description of what it looked like.
Please.
Is that correct? It was whitish. It was white. And it was quite small.
Where were you within the home when you saw this item picked up? How far away from the item were you?
I was in...
I'm going to be honest. I don't know what's happening. I haven't been able to keep up with this. What is we even talking about? Like...
The foyer area, the living room, the entryway around where...
Dude, I am lost right now.
Was
found. And the lighting there was sufficient, is that correct?
Objection.
The objection is, well, he said correct, so by then he's modified his question. Was the lighting...
Okay, they're talking about a tooth. That's news to me. That's where I'm at right now.
Problem seeing what you saw?
I don't recall any problems.
All right, next question, please.
Who picked up this item that you just described for us?
Answer the question.
Okay, here we go. Thank you. You got me back on track. I was losing my mind. I apologize. Bo Pete Steve, this fucking guy was at Phil's house with a prior attorney and found a tooth of the victim. Got you. All right.
One of the members of the defense team.
Objection non-responsive.
I'm surprised this guy didn't kick it underneath a fucking couch or something. So I ain't got nothing to do with that shit.
And now we'll find out who it was.
Who was it?
The objection is overruled. The answer will stand. Now answer the question.
An attorney. And it was Ms. Kaplan.
What happened next? What did you see happen next? Please don't tell us any conversation, but what happened? What did you see happen next after Sarah Kaplan picked up the small white item that you described for us?
If there was a conversation without telling us what it was, you may say that somebody conversed with someone else without telling us what the subject matter was.
May you ask, can you ask the question again?
Thanks, guys.
After you saw Sarah Kaplan pick up the small white item that you've described for us, what happened next? Did she give it to someone, have a conversation with someone? Tell us what happened next.
The item was turned over.
To whom?
It made its way.
Who was it first turned over to?
Sustained. Who was the object turned over to? Name the person if you know.
May I confer with Mr.
No,
Wilson
sir.
for a moment?
I have ruled on your privilege. At this point, this question simply calls for an observation of who this object was turned over to.
Dr. Bodden.
At the time that Sarah Kaplan turned over the small white item to Dr. Bodden, without telling us what the conversation was there any conversation
You gotta see the issue.
between the two of them?
I don't recall.
So the issue is, I'm guessing, because one of Phil Spector's attorneys is Dr. Bodden's wife.
Then took the item from Sarah Kaplan, is that right?
Who is not there right now either. She's probably back there petting Phil
He
Spector.
did look at the item.
What happened next with the item? What did you see happen next?
As far as the item is concerned,
Yes, what happened next after Bodden took it from Sarah Kaplan? Did he keep it? Did he give it to someone else?
I don't know.
There she
Do you
is.
know
She's
a
in there.
man- Well, I think, well, let me withdraw that and ask you this. You've told us earlier that Bill Pavlik
Linda
was there,
Bodden.
correct?
I think I was calling her Bad
And it was your
Bodden.
understanding that he was a private investigator.
Yes.
Did you ever see Bill Pavlik take possession of that item after Dr. Bodden had it, took it from Sarah Kaplan?
I don't recall.
Do you recall, well, let me back
This
up
is,
a moment.
yes. Yes.
I asked you earlier if you called a couple weeks ago the DA's office, you talked to Alan Jackson, correct?
Yes.
And at some point, he told you to be contacted by members of the Los Angeles Police Department. Is that right?
That is correct.
And you were. You were contacted by officers of the Los Angeles Police Department, isn't that right?
That is correct.
They interviewed you?
Yes.
And during that conversation, isn't it true that you told them
Objection, Your Honor. We've never been given discovery.
I don't have any reports. I think this is based on our conversations, what Professor Levinson reported. A lot of it was done informally, and I believe you have heard this. I'm going to allow the cross-examination.
I think what we're anticipating.
I'm sorry if I misunderstood.
What we're anticipating is now we're, based on Mr. Dixon's questions, it's clearly he's laying a foundation here. Apparently, this witness has spoken with somebody from LAPD, and if so, there's a decent chance, better than a decent chance, that they authored some report.
Well, it's very easy to find. It's very easy to find out. Is there a report?
No, I have
Okay.
never talked to, and neither has Mr.
That takes care of the objection.
And for the record,
Mr. Dixon, I think I've laid it out as to my
Good
understanding. You may proceed.
Lord.
thank you.
This is an
During
interesting
a
one.
conversation with members of the Los Angeles Police Department's Robbery Homicide Division, didn't you tell them that at some point you saw this small white object that you believed to be part of a tooth given to Bill Pavlik, the investigator?
I apologize. Could you repeat the question just one more time? Thank you.
During your interview with members of the Los Angeles Police Department's Robbery Homicide Division, isn't it true that you told them that you saw Bill Pavlik, the private investigator, take possession of this small white piece of evidence that you believed to be a tooth?
Overruled. I'm going to allow it because that's how we're going to get there. Did you make such a statement?
I don't recall.
Are you lying, sir?
Did you tell them
I need a
in that
moment.
same conversation that Bill Pavlik took this small white piece of material, placed it in his pocket?
No.
You recall that?
I never said that.
He's answered the question. He says he didn't say.
What did you tell them, if anything, what you saw Bill Pavlik do that evening with respect to the white piece of... At this point, the way the question was phrased, the objection
is sustained. But I'm going to interject myself at this point. Sir, I want you to tell me all your observations concerning this white object from the time that you say that Ms. Kaplan got it, showed it to Dr. Bodden. What, if anything, did you then observe with that object?
I recall seeing the object. I recall hearing that it was...
Objection, excuse me, that's not responsive.
I'm going to sustain that. I will strike that. Just tell me if there was a conversation, you may say you heard a conversation without giving me the contents of the conversation.
Oh, Lord, let me fix the sound. Sorry about that. If I can. Hopefully it's not in the audio there.
I take it that you heard a conversation concerning the object.
It was not exactly a conversation.
You heard words concerning the object?
Yes.
All right. What did you then observe, if anything?
I observed that it was simply identified.
Okay, with that, again, just you saw somebody talked about what it was. Is that correct?
Yes.
What happened then?
You mean as far as what the defense team started to do?
What happened to the object? That is all that I'm concerned with.
Your Honor, I do not know what happened to the object. I do not know.
The last time you saw it, who had it?
I don't recall.
You're certain you don't recall?
At this point, right here and now, I do not recall.
At some time earlier, whether in the last 2 weeks, did you recall who had the object? Did you tell anyone who had the object?
At this point, it is unclear.
Tell us! Tell us! Just open the fucking... What is happening? Open your mouth!
Recollection of making such a statement?
What is your memory?
Who was or who had it?
I'm trying to answer as accurately as possible, Your Honor.
This would be good.
And
God.
as
God.
as
Why?
really accurate as I could remember.
That's what we want.
We want.
That's why I say, Your Honor, right now, at this present point, I do not recall the last person that had it.
Could you tell us all the people you do recall who might have had it?
Excuse me, Your Honor, might have had it?
No, who you recall, I'm sorry, it was inartfully phrased. I'll sustain your objection. Tell me everyone you saw that you can remember who touched the object.
Right now, at this present time, it's a little cloudy to recall exactly, but it was seen and it was observed, and at this present point, I would like to answer the question, but it is obviously a very serious question.
All my questions are serious. The question is, can you give it a serious answer? Just tell me, to the best of your recollection, who touched the object.
At this present time, I cannot answer that question.
You may proceed.
Why can't you answer it? Why?
Are you being threatened?
Please tell us.
Do you want a chance to consult?
Yes, I would.
All right, you may have an opportunity. Yes, it's a good time for recess. We'll be in recess for 15 minutes.
Wow, what is going on this morning, y'all? This is insane. This is wild.
All right. Excuse me. Court's in session. We're back on
Something's
the record.
going on, dude.
Parties and the
Fuck.
witness are present as heretofore. In reviewing, Mr. Worksman, in reviewing your request to be in camera to go over the privilege claim, I've taken a look at some authorities. Under 915B of the Evidence Code, if the witness claims a privilege, even though I don't particularly see it, I'm going to give him an opportunity to explain to me the basis of privilege. It must be done in camera. So therefore, I will go back with the reporter, with counsel, with the witness. If you want, Mr. Worksman, if he is claiming a basis, he is tried on a couple of occasions to claim the Fifth Amendment privilege. If you think there's a basis for it and you want to go in camera with that, I'm happy to do so. I'm required to do so, more than happy to do so.
May I have just a moment?
You may.
Oh, what is...
Would like the opportunity to address you.
All right, so that everyone understands, if what you tell me, sir, is not privileged, then that proceeding will be part of the public record. If for any reason I uphold your privilege, then obviously it would not be. So I'll go back in camera with the reporter, with Mr. Worksman, and with the witness.
Yeah.
Order court taking a session.
We're going to be with this guy for a long time.
I'm sorry, we're not back on the record because the record's not working right now.
And that man broke the record.
Okay. All
Good
right, back on the
God,
record.
dude.
We have held it in camera. Based upon that in camera, there is no basis.
Oh, thanks so much, Kalen. Appreciate that. Get that shit out there, guys. Go retweet and go retreat. Go retweet the streams out here. Get this thing pumping.
And just to recap a little bit from where we were.
All right.
Okay. Again, good afternoon. Mr. Diamond, you told us earlier on February 4th, 2003, you were at Phil Spector's house with the members of the defense team that you've mentioned, correct?
Yes.
And at some point, you told us that you saw Sarah Kaplan pick up an item, a small white item, correct?
Sarah Kaplan found an item, yes.
Can you describe that to the best of your ability?
An item was found. An item was simply found at the...
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
An item was found lodged between a carpet and a staircase.
How far away from Sarah Kaplan were you when she found that item?
Within the same vicinity, in the same room.
Well, within 10 feet, 5 feet? Tell me someplace in the courtroom. I'll walk towards you. Tell me how close you were.
Around there. I mean...
Damn, just see the way she grabbed that dude? She pulled that motherfucker back to her mouth.
Around that vicinity, maybe more. Maybe more.
I'm sorry, I looked down for a second. Where were you pointing to?
Well...
Where you are is approximately 9 feet.
Is that approximately how far away from you Sarah Kaplan was when she found the small white item?
The room that we're talking about isn't very large, so it couldn't be further than a certain distance.
Hey, thanks, Gabby.
From one side to the other. I'd say it was no further than the cart behind you, and no closer than where you're standing.
Just a second, let me interrupt if I might. Do we have a photograph that's available right now? Or
well, we might, Mr. Jackson.
If you do, then we might be able to pinpoint it on the photograph.
We have the Elmo fired up.
Well, I don't know if you can show them the photograph. That'll be fine. Well, if you want to put it on the Elmo, we'll be happy to do that.
Let me go on, though. And then after you saw Sarah Kaplan pick up this item, she gave it to Dr. Bodden, correct?
Dr. Bodden was somebody who commented on the item, yes, afterwards.
Yeah, that's totally what he asked. That makes total. That's yep.
The comment about the
Perfect.
object is not, once that object was moved, a comment about that object is not privileged.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Thanks for the ruling, Ms. Abramson. I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with you.
No, I didn't say it, Judge. It never happened.
Okay.
Well, with that in mind, may I?
Right. Yes. So that
Like
we
this
know what
lady
object we're
acts
talking
so
about.
unprofessional.
It does have a lot of bearing on what's going on here. I'm going to allow it.
Did Sarah Kaplan make any statement with respect to the object when she first found it?
Solely the identity of what it was. That's all I'm concerned about.
I don't recall as far as her making the comment, no.
Then she gave it, as you told us, to Dr. Bodden. Did he make a statement with respect to, apparently, the item?
Dr. Bodden did make mention as to what the item at the time, to his knowledge, was.
And what did he say?
It was a fragment of a tooth.
And what happened next? What did Dr. Bodden do, if anything, with the item?
That I don't recall.
Did you ever see him give the item to Bill Pavlik, the private investigator?
I don't recall at this moment.
Earlier, before the break, you told us that your memory was, what, fuzzy about this now?
No, I never said that.
that you just didn't recall?
I'm attempting to be as accurate as possible in light of the questions that you're answering. I mean, you're giving to me.
Isn't it true, let me just ask you, isn't it true that you told the LAPD robbery homicide investigators that Dr. Bodden gave the small white tooth-like item to Bill Pavlik?
Well, if you're asking me what I might have said then, I'm not exactly sure what I might have exactly said in light of those terms, but I did say, what I did say was that it was passed around. I did say that, and I'll stick, I mean, obviously, I mean, that's
okay,
a
well,
fact.
Let's talk about that.
Obviously!
After Dr. Bodden received the small, perhaps piece of tooth from Sarah Kaplan, who got it next? Describe to us all the people that had possession of it.
Dr. Bodden had taken a look and made, for him to have made that, judgment of what it was, he had it. As far as Bill Pavlik having the item and taking it, you know, everyone had seen the item in some capacity. As far as everyone holding it and taking possession of it, that's why it's hard for me to answer this question. As far as anyone having a hand on it, that's you know, we're talking about, you know, did one person individually have it after another, and who was the last person to have it? I know that Dr. Bodden had seen it, Sarah had seen it, I know that Bill had seen it, Mr. Pavlik.
Just taking notes.
Again, going back to my earlier question, I'd like you to tell us in as best detail as you can recall the path from person to person that this small white item followed that evening. It went, as you just told us, from Dr. Bodden to Bill Pavlik next.
It wasn't at the time when, as an observer being there, you know, it wasn't. It was passed around, yes. I have to answer yes to that question.
Oh,
tell us,
nice.
to the best of your recollection, who of all the defense team there had it that evening? Who was it passed to from person to person to person? Describe those people. Tell us who they were.
Well, Sarah was the one to find it, and Bodden was the one to make his assessment of what it was. And
what's up, Kelly? Welcome in here.
There was Mr. Pavlik, who was present around that area too, everybody was mulling around what they found. And I was I was there, but I was like an outsider to that group. I was an observer. I'm not an attorney. You know, I'm an observer. I was getting ready to take the bar exam, and I was just there, and I just happened to see this. And may I add?
No, sir. You just be responsive to the question.
Okay.
If that's an objection, it's sustained. You may ask your next question.
Thank you. Could you tell us, as this piece of evidence, the small white piece of perhaps tooth, was passed from person to person in the defense team, were there other statements made with respect to the piece of tooth?
Your Honor.
You can answer that yes or no.
What was alleged to have been a piece of tooth? Was that?
It's the yes or no qualified.
Well, yes or no might be a little more difficult than you might assume.
It's
you
pretty
may
hard.
Go ahead and ask the question.
Very difficult.
That's the only statement that really clearly stays imprinted in my mind.
In all of life, in all of my existence on planet Earth, that's it. That's all that I'm going to sit here and stand by. That's the only word I'll stand by too, damn it.
That's the one.
Imagine an argument with this man if he did have a wife.
Dr. Bott.
That's correct.
Or a husband.
Did you ever
Jesus Christ.
see Bill Pavlik take the small white item, perhaps a piece of tooth,
It would
put it in
be
his pocket?
No.
Do you recall ever telling the
no.
Los Angeles Police Department?
No.
You never said that.
I never said that. However, I'd like to elaborate.
Objection, non-response.
Holy shit, he's going to
If
elaborate.
that doesn't answer the question, I'll allow you to explain what might have happened or what you believe happened. Go ahead.
That question that you just asked me was posed to me, and I answered no. Just the way you presented it to me, that somebody might have put it in their pocket. And the answer to that is no.
When is the last time you saw the small white item, perhaps the tooth, of that evening? Who had it last?
That's a question that I've been asked here and earlier with law enforcement, and that's a question that, at this point in time, I don't recall who might have had it the last time, but it was something that was passed around. And as far as I know, Sarah found it, Dr. Bodden had made his identification of what it was, and Mr. Pavlik was there as well to be there with this piece of evidence that was found.
I understand. If it's the term piece of evidence, that'll be stricken. Thank you. You may proceed.
Did it appear from everything that you saw that evening that one of Bill Pavlik's jobs was to assist in the collection of any evidence?
You know, I'm going to sustain as to what his role was. We're concerned with whether something was discovered, what was done with it, where it is. Right now, I'm going to leave it at that.
Do you have any idea what happened to this small white item?
No, Morton Sleuthy.
No, I don't know where.
Welcome to hell.
And you're telling us that you don't recall who last had it?
No.
Could I have a moment, please, Your
You may.
Where the hell's Phil Spector? Get this man in here so we can all have a fucking laugh.
While you're taking a moment, sir, can you see the pictures up on? They're not real clear from where you are. Can you see those pictures?
Yeah.
Do you recognize what they are?
Yeah, there's the red carpet, and I can barely make out, well, I guess there's the staircase.
Are you able to point out where this item was recovered? You were trying to describe it before. Do you see it there in any of the pictures?
From looking at it from a distance at this point, I can't exactly pinpoint that. No.
If Mr. Dixon comes up to you with
Sure,
a picture.
I'd like to take a look. Thank you.
You may.
And would you like to mark this for this here?
No, it's already been, hasn't it already been marked? Isn't it?
It's going to be.
If it's going to be marked, we'll hold off for a moment. Do you know, temporarily, we'll mark it. I believe we have Courts 1. Let's make it Courts 2, but we'll vacate that if you put it into evidence under your own number.
Mr. Diamond, I'm going to present to you what we've now marked as Courts 2 for this hearing. It's 4 photographs, color photographs. Take a moment, look at it, and then we'll have another question for you. Have you had a chance to look at that exhibit, Courts 2?
Yes.
4 photographs. Looking at that exhibit, do any one or perhaps more than one of those photographs assist you in telling us where you were standing when you first
God,
saw...
I was so excited at first. No. Man, I wish we had David Cross, quite frankly.
I'll pick up this small white...
What am I hearing? Is that my
I was
phone
standing more
making the interference here? What the fuck is happening?
If you look at picture A, picture A.
In the video?
In here. More.
Yes, please. So looking at photograph A in Courts 2, up near the top of the photograph is where you were standing. Is that correct?
Yes, because I was not in the zone where, that the closest area to where Lana Clarkson was shot, or whatever. Anyway, but this obviously these pictures to look at this point, since I was there, it is very highly, emotional as well, because I haven't taken a look at.
Let me ask you another question. Again, using Courts Exhibit 2 for identification. Anyone
Just kind of trailed off there at the end, didn't he?
Can you assist us in using any of those photographs and telling us where Sarah Kaplan was when she found the small white piece of...
It was more in the circular area.
Let me finish before you start.
Yes,
Yo,
sir.
Morton Stevie.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. It was more in the circular area, and...
Using what photograph?
A.
Okay, again A.
Whoa.
In more of the lodged between the wood and the staircase area.
Do you have a laser pointer by any chance?
Do we?
Mr. Plord will.
That would help. Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
I'd reach up there, but it's a long way.
Mr. Plord thinks he might have one. Court can't afford a laser pointer, so we don't have one, but.
Maybe they would have a laser inlet.
Thank you, though.
It's hard to push.
There we go. All right, again, inviting your attention to Court's Exhibit 2 for this hearing. Photograph 1, in an earlier answer, you said you were standing in the area that I'm now pointing at when you observed Sarah Kaplan pick up the small piece of white tube.
I was there.
Okay. And in a later answer, and correct me if I'm wrong, did you indicate that Sarah Kaplan was in the area I'm now pointing to in photograph A of Courts 2 when she found the small white piece of...
Everybody was congregated pretty much in that area.
When you say everyone, who do you mean? Tell us.
Kaplan and Bodden and Lee were in that area. It was all being investigated there with the blood and you know, this whole area was very much...
I'm going to object. Our question's been answered. It's now becoming...
I agree. That portion...
Motion to strike after.
The latter portion that was just coming in, that will be stricken after the question was answered.
You, in an earlier answer today, said that this small piece of white, perhaps tooth, was passed around to everyone there. Is that correct?
It was passed around, yeah.
Did you see Henry Lee with it?
No, I did not. I didn't see him.
Where was Henry Lee in relationship to Dr. Bodden when Dr. Bodden had it and made the comment?
Dr. Bodden was more from the chair, where the chair was. You can't see the chair in the pictures, but if you look at picture A, and to the right of that picture would be the chair and the mirror above the chair. So Bodden mostly stayed. Dr. Bodden was pretty much in that area. Dr. Lee was in that area, and he would go back and forth because he had a lab kit of some sort, some kind of kit in the other room. So he would go back and forth.
Earlier you told us that at some point Bill Pavlik had the item, but you don't recall whether or not Dr. Bodden actually handed the item to Bill Pavlik. Is that correct?
I think that's not.
Well, I'm asking him.
Since he asked, is that correct? If it's wrong, the witness can indicate it's wrong.
That's correct.
Thank you. Do you know in what order that happened? Did Pavlik have it first, the small white item, or did Bodden have it first? Or do you know?
From what I recall, it was something that, you know, Bodden, I really recall Bodden just making the point of what it was. In my memory, from 4 years ago, this was something that I remember Bodden making the point that that was a tooth fragment, and I don't forget that. And as far as if he was holding it, he was very close to it, and I was at a certain distance away from that with, you know, there were other people there all excited.
And then was the small white item passed around after Dr. Bodden made his comment about the tooth?
It was somehow looked at from the people in that area, that group, the group that was there. And that includes Bodden. And I don't know if Sarah might have kind of walked away from that area to let the other people get involved to see what it is.
Just a few more questions.
Right.
Some perhaps 2 weeks ago, or maybe as recently as a week ago, you told us that you were interviewed by members of the Los Angeles Police Department Robbery Homicide Division, correct?
That's right, yeah.
Do you recall their names?
Vic and Jay.
Jay Mobley?
Yes.
And Vic Petrotroni?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. One more moment, I think.
All right.
Can we have just a second now?
You may.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you. I think I'm through, but I would like to approach and ask the court if I might go into one other area, but I think I need the court's guidance first.
cross-examination. Who's been selected? Mr. Plord? Yes.
Before Mr. Plord begins, may I make an inquiry along the lines of 1118? It doesn't seem, well, the reason I'm saying this is that if there's not enough to go forward, there's no point in going forward. And what you're talking about is some unidentified item that was overlooked during the 24, 36 hours, however long the legions, literally, of investigators were there, that has previously been described to the earlier court as there was nothing of any evidentiary value that was removed from the scene. We haven't heard anything contrary to that at this point.
Well, I would disagree. That may be where it ends up. It is certainly quite possible that this may not be a piece of evidence. We have to hear from all the parties. But at this point...
There's still 7 minutes of this video, but I'm going to show you guys something as I scroll down here. I know, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. So we have this one right here. And then we get Dr. Bodden. And then he comes back. It's not over.
Given the witness's observations, the characterization by Dr. Bodden as to what it appeared to be to him, that would not be the conclusion that I would reach, what you just stated. So at this point, preliminarily, and just preliminarily only, because who knows what all the evidence will show. There's already been some contrary evidence. I've been told that, but for the missing piece from the coroner, there's a complete set of teeth, so this has to be explored as well.
God.
I'm going to take all that into consideration at the appropriate time. Mr. Plord?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Diamond. What's your current occupation at this time?
At the present time, I am a paralegal secretary right now.
Okay.
And, oh, go ahead.
And when did you took the bar? Did you ever pass the bar?
No, this all goes to the overall understanding. It goes to credibility. I need to know as much as legitimately can be raised about the individual. You may proceed.
I was preparing, as I mentioned before, to take the bar examination. I was well on my way to go ahead, and after visiting after that day, 3 weeks later, I never showed up to take the examination.
Did you ever take the bar examination?
I did take it again.
3 times?
No.
How many times did you take it?
You know what? That's becoming irrelevant.
That's not true.
That's all right. It's becoming irrelevant.
Do you have any projects that you're trying to sell right now in the works outside of your paralegal duties that you just described, secretarial duties?
Over the past 4 years, I have been a writer and technically a producer. I did sell a show to CBS back in 2004.
Do you have any other projects?
God, what show was that? Can you find that? What the hell?
Companies, entertainment companies?
I've always been working on projects.
What show did he sell to CBS?
No, not every question can be.
Are you trying to sell any type of projects relating to legal matters to any entertainment companies? If you could answer yes or no, please do so.
I have been since I've been selling. That 2004 show to CBS was a law show, yes.
Okay. Right now, are you trying to sell something to an entertainment company?
I am continuing to do so, but not in particular any particular entertainment company. Okay. No, I'm continuing to do what I've been doing.
What's his name again?
Now,
Gregory
with reference to your relationship with Mr. Shapiro, how did you physically get to the Alhambra property? In other words, what car, vehicle, mode of transportation did you take?
Going from Century City to Alhambra, I was in Sarah's car.
Okay. Who else was in the car besides yourself?
In that car, it was just us.
Okay. And when you arrived there, were there any other vehicles there that you observed?
Yes, there were other vehicles.
Okay. What other vehicles did you observe?
There was a limousine.
Okay. Other than that, what did you observe?
I believe there were some other officer cars.
Law enforcement vehicles?
Not necessarily with the decals on it, but from what I recall, other cars that...
Other than law enforcement vehicles, just the limousine was present, is that correct?
And the limousine, yes, that is correct.
Did you see any other vehicles arrive after you arrived with Ms. Kaplan?
Well, there was Mr. Shapiro's car,
Okay.
who was in front of our car.
Who was in Mr. Shapiro's car?
I believe on the going, to be accurate again, I can't be certain who was in his car, but I can't assume either, so.
Was he in his car, Mr. Shapiro?
Absolutely.
Were there other people that you were in his car at the time, you just don't know who they were?
On the going, I'm not sure. I know Dr. Bodden and Dr. Lee were present there, but I don't know if they were in that car at this
Were there
moment.
other people in Mr. Shapiro's car that you observed, but you just don't know who was
I'm
there?
certain there were other people in his car. I don't know exactly which ones.
How many other people were in his car that you remember?
I don't recall.
Okay. Did you ever know a person by the name of White, Stan White? Was he ever identified to you?
I don't recall the name.
Could you recognize him if you saw him again?
Possibly.
Your Honor, I'd ask that Mr. White be asked to be brought in so we can see whether he recognizes him.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Sir, if you could just come up here, that'll be fine.
Oh, just right there. Mr. Diamond, do you recognize this gentleman right here in the distinguished grayish hair? You recognize him?
You know, I don't recall. I really don't recall.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. You may step out.
Thank you.
Your Honor, can we just have a moment? I had a question.
All right, we're going to get a break for him at least. We're going to get Dr. Bodden up here.
Your Honor,
Yes.
because of the urgency of the hearing.
He's going to sit down for 2 seconds. Yeah, he handed me the tooth. It's my time.
Schedule and so forth, as the court knows, Dr. Bodden came in from New York on a flight yesterday to be here today, and we'd like to have him testify and interrupt this witness's testimony if that's the case, because we'd like to get it back to New York to his normal routine.
I'll hear from the people.
Your Honor, so we're happy to accommodate the defense.
I agree we should. All right, sir, you're not excused. You can step down. We'll see how we're going today. Just step out in the hallway. Do not discuss this case with anyone unless you have my permission to do so, except your own counsel, of course, or the attorneys in the case, and we'll interrupt. Yes, but we may get back to him today, is what I'm saying. But it's up to you, sir. He's basically, the court's ruled on the privilege, so it's between the two of you.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate it. You're hanging out and you haven't maybe hit that like, do so.
There's another issue while we're waiting for Dr. Bodden. And Ms. Abramson, this is...
Help the old murder church grow.
At one point you represented Mr. Spector.
Yes.
And then you no longer did. And I can't remember, and again, what's in the papers doesn't, control what's in the courtroom. Something about a potential conflict. And no conflict?
No, not at
All right.
all.
That's all I needed to hear. Thank you.
No, sir.
All right.
I wouldn't be here.
I appreciate that.
She always has to say something else. Jesus Christ. I'm interested to see how long Bodden's video is going to be. 43 minutes. Okay, we're getting a little bit of a break here anyways. Bo Pete hanging out this morning, bringing in $1.99 to $2. Thank you. I do not recall. I don't recall. That has become the theme of the week. Why should it not just continue happening? Good freaking Lord. That was brutal, and I'm going to go ahead and peek. I have to see how long the next one is, and I'm not going to tell you guys. It's going to be a secret that only I will know. I guess from my reaction, you probably will know what's happening. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out. Really appreciate it. Hit that like, again, if you have not. That really helps us out, guys. I love it. Help the old murder church grow. And let me, hold on. While I've got it up here, show you some love while I did it.
Give me the loot! Give me the loot!
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Thank you so much, Bo Pete. Yeah, we're going to keep rocking and rolling here. I'm going to hit you with a stinger, and we're going to go into Dr. Bodden talking about this tooth, I'm assuming. Let's rock.
Did you solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause and opinion before this court shall be the
Let's
truth,
rock.
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Michael Baden, B-A-D-E-N.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Yeah, Dr. Baden, what is your occupation, sir?
I'm a physician.
Hey, good morning, Charlene. Get in here. Get into the church. Get in here. We're rocking and rolling this morning.
Pathologist, medical examiner.
And how long have you been doing that type of work?
47 years.
Do you have any employment with any law enforcement agencies in the United States?
Yes.
And what agencies are there?
New York State Police.
And how long have you been employed with them?
22 years as a chief forensic pathologist for the New York State Police.
And as a forensic pathologist, have you ever been retained by third parties or outside individuals or agencies?
Yes.
Have you ever been employed on behalf of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office?
Yes.
When's the first time you were employed by the District Attorney's Office?
1980, at the concerning the death of Ron Settles.
Okay.
I was employed by Johnny Cochran and then by Mr. Garcetti as for the District Attorney's Office.
Okay. And since that first retention, have you worked on other cases involving prosecutions by the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office?
Yes.
Okay. And approximately how many different cases, if you could briefly describe that?
Oh, I guess about a half dozen other cases. John Belushi, I testified for the District Attorney's Office in the grand jury. Dr. Richard Boggs, which involved a physician who was accused of killing three individuals for an insurance scam. And I testified, I think, in 3 trials for, I think the district attorney was Al McKenzie.
Okay.
I also worked with Al McKenzie in the Saldivar, the Glendale respiratory assistant who was accused, who had admitted to killing 50 people at the hospitals around Los Angeles. More recently, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, I performed an exhumation for Mr. Barshop in a Air Jordan death case that I understand is still pending.
Okay. Pending in some type of litigation, I think?
Yes, that is the question of homicide, which John Perkins and the Glendale police are involved in.
Okay.
Lieutenant Detective John Perkins.
Okay. Dr. Bond, in your career, approximately how many times have you gone to a death scene in the type of work you do?
I've been to many thousands of death scenes in the past 47 years.
And when you go to a death scene, what is your role? In other words, what would be the reason you would do that?
My role is to investigate any aspect that might be of help from a forensic pathology point of view in evaluating what happened, evaluating things like time of death, medications the person may have been on, whether they're digitalis or insulin or alcohol bottles in the place where the death occurred, and making sure that any type of evidence that might be present on the body is properly removed or protected during the transportation from the place of death to the mortuary, and then to further examine the body at the mortuary for any trace evidence, in addition to cause of death.
Thank you. Now, with reference to the month of February of 2003, were you retained by an attorney by the name of Robert Shapiro to come to California for any reason?
Yes.
And what was that reason?
He advised me that he had a client, Phil Spector, who had been accused of, I think at that time accused of killing a woman, Alana Clarkson, and asked me if I'd be able to respond and attend the autopsy.
And did you
of Ms. Clarkson.
Okay, and did you do that?
Yes, I called Dr. Lakshmanan, the chief medical examiner, who used to work in New York City, and he arranged to delay the autopsy till I got there, and I attended and participated in the autopsy. I think by Dr. Penna.
And at some point in time during that trip to California to do the autopsy, did you have occasion to go to the home of Mr. Spector?
Yeah. After the autopsy was completed, at some time, I think later that same evening, I think, I did go with Mr. Shapiro, Dr. Henry Lee, and others to the death scene.
And when you arrived at the death scene, you mentioned there were others that went there. Were there some other attorneys other than Mr. Shapiro that were there?
As far as I remember, attorney Sarah Kaplan, who was there, Bob Shapiro, Dr. Lee, Investigator Pavlik, myself. I think there were other people there, but I don't recall specifically.
Dr. Bott, did you collect anything from that death scene?
No.
Did you observe Sarah Kaplan pick up or collect anything from that death scene?
No.
Did Sarah Kaplan ever give you any item or object to look at?
No.
Specifically, did she ever give you any type of a white object or a white colored object and ask you to take a look at it or anything such as that?
No.
Did you ever make a comment while you were at the home of Mr. Spector on that night or that evening that you just talked about that you had seen anything that you thought was like tooth material?
No.
As a forensic pathologist, do you, would you comment on making a find like that? In other words, do you identify things as being tooth material as opposed to something else?
No, and that would be well beyond my expertise or ability to contribute anything.
What is the subject area of the forensic discipline dealing with tooth material?
There is a discipline of forensic odontology that specializes in evaluation of teeth and fragments of teeth, and of course, criminalists, forensic scientists like Dr. Lee also can evaluate any kinds of trace evidence, including teeth.
Can I have a minute?
Yes.
Did you see anybody else while you were present pick up any white object and make any comment that it was some type of tooth material?
No.
Did you ever see, Mr. Pavlik was an investigator? Is that
Yes,
true?
I believe so.
Did you ever see him handle any type of item or object?
I didn't. I mean, I wasn't watching him.
I didn't. I didn't.
I did not see Mr. Pavlik
clear. Thank you.
handle any kind of evidence.
Other than just observe what was going on there, were you doing anything at that particular death scene during that period of time?
No, it was mostly to observe the place where the death occurred, the layout, the temperature that has to do with time of death, and but I did not. Remember, we got there. There'd been like a few dozen Los Angeles police and crime lab people who had been there for 37 hours before I got there. Before we got there, that cleaned up whatever evidence was there, as far as I could see.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Nothing further. You're welcome.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. When were you retained?
I believe I was retained shortly after the death occurred, before I came to Los Angeles before the autopsy. I hadn't been retained by Mr. Shapiro.
Explain how you were retained. How were you first contacted?
Here we go, little Alan Jackson. Woo! Let's go.
I recall Mr. Shapiro.
How he was contacted, what is the relevance of that?
Your Honor, I'll reform my question. All right. Were you contacted by phone?
Objection 3.
Again, how he was contacted, this hearing is a rather limited hearing. Anything that certainly goes to credibility, anything along those lines, but how he was contacted, I don't see the relevance.
Then I'll narrow my scope even further.
Right.
How much were you paid to fly from the East Coast to the West Coast that first time?
I think, I don't recall. I'd have to check the records, but I wasn't paid to fly to the East Coast. I think
to the West Coast.
To the West Coast. I think there was my secretary would have billed for the hours that I was involved in working on the matter.
Okay. Well, the point I was getting to, Doctor, is you were not local. In other words, when you were first contacted and retained.
No, I was 3,000 miles away.
Okay, and give me a general idea. Robert Shapiro calls you up and says, Dr. Bodden, I need you out here on the West Coast. I need you post-haste. How much would you charge to come out here?
Normally, nowadays, which is more than I used to charge, when this happened it was less. Now it would be about $7,500 to come out and review an autopsy, and it was less 4 years ago.
All right, and that's just the initial payment, correct?
The initial charge for going there, doing work, and coming back.
Okay, and did that include going to the crime scene?
Yes.
Did you know that? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
Whatever time I spent, it was for time. No matter what I did, it was the time involved.
Makes us all want to dance, doesn't it?
That's true.
Did you know when you were asked to come out here and attend the autopsy, Dr. Bodden, that you'd also be asked to go to the crime scene?
Yes, that in order to do a proper forensic pathology evaluation, one should see the autopsy, participate in the autopsy if possible, and to see where the death occurred. And that helps in figuring out what happened.
And you were also aware that the body of Lana Clarkson had previously been removed before you ever made your way to the crime scene, correct?
That's correct.
As a matter of fact, even the chair that she was sitting in had been removed by the authorities before you ever went there.
When we got there, the chair wasn't there. That's correct.
So there was really no reason for you to go there to see the body as it lay in state, correct?
Well, I knew when I went, that the body was in the Los Angeles Medical Examiner mortuary. I spoke to Dr. Lakshmanan, who's the chief medical examiner, before I came, and advised him of my schedule and whether it would be possible for me to attend the autopsy, as I had done previously with other deaths that I've been called during the past 25 years.
Dr. Bodden, what did Mr. Shapiro explain to you was going to be your role as far as coming out?
Sustained.
Were you in fact told that you were coming out to attend the autopsy and possibly look at the crime scene?
Objection, privilege.
Sustained.
Was your role one of an independent practitioner? In other words, a member of the defense team, an independent person to come and review the autopsy along with the medical examiner who's going to actually perform the work?
Yeah, my role was to come to the autopsy, to participate as much as proper in the autopsy, to go to the crime scene, death scene, we didn't know if it was a crime, and to advise Mr. Shapiro of my opinions and what I, as a forensic pathologist, thought should be further explored.
As a forensic pathologist who's been hired by third parties before, both by you had indicated on direct examination by the prosecution in certain jurisdictions, and I'm assuming by defense in certain jurisdictions as well, correct?
Yes.
As a forensic pathologist, do you believe that it is important to maintain a level of independence in order to ensure an unbiased view of the facts and circumstances that you're asked to opine on?
Objection, Your Honor, 352.
Overruled. Again, this goes to credibility.
Absolutely.
And as an independent practitioner, did you in fact observe the autopsy being performed by Dr. Pena?
Yes.
As an independent practitioner, did you go to the crime scene and observe the crime scene as it was turned over to the defense?
Yes.
Do you believe that it is important to maintain that level of independence in order to maintain an unbiased view of any crime scene or death scene or autopsy that you review and analyze?
Yeah, not only an unbiased view, but an accurate view. Yes.
Are you related to anybody in this courtroom?
Yes.
Who are you related to?
My wife.
Well, who's your wife?
Linda Bodden Kenny, Linda Kenny Bodden, who is...
you're never going to live that one down.
Who is in the back of the, whatever you call this area.
This is a courtroom.
No, that area
next to the bar.
that you're privileged to.
What is happening today?
Lady to my right, the blonde.
Bro.
Yes.
Okay.
Is it acting weird as shit?
The three young lady blondes ones before me.
So I understand you correctly, you're actually married to a member of the defense team in this case?
I am, proudly so.
Do you recall Greg Diamond being at the location?
I have no idea who Greg Diamond is.
Did you see a young...
I don't know who he is. You show me a picture.
I've never seen Greg Diamond in my entire life. If Greg Diamond was in this room, how would I ever know it? I'd never know it. I'm telling you right now, Greg Diamond, I don't think I've never met a Greg in my life. I definitely never met a Diamond. I've heard of diamonds. I don't really even like diamonds. Now, come to think of it.
A better idea.
Well, I can do you one better than that. Did you see a young man walking out of the courtroom when you were walking in?
No. I know there was somebody who walked out. There were 2 or 3 people who walked out.
Jesus fuck! He's actually doing it! Oh. Oh, God.
Although it's obviously inconvenient,
Bro, this is
we appreciate
fucking
the chance you got
stupid.
to be with your wife.
That was the benefit. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Since we don't have the jurors present, we can go a little bit later today.
Okay.
We'll go to 4:30.
Thank you.
While we're waiting...
Or as long as it takes to get Dr. Bodden's testimony completed.
While we're waiting, I might as well ask you the next question. I'm also going to ask you if you recognize the name Stan White as well.
Now, the 2 people came in.
Okay.
Neither of whom I recognize.
The person to my right wearing the black jacket and the glasses. Do you recognize that person?
No.
All right. Do you recognize the name? Thank you very much.
Thank you. You may step back
Do you
outside.
recognize Stan White? The name, Stan White.
Oh, who is Stan White?
I'm going to ask you that.
No, I don't.
Okay. I'm going to have somebody else step in the room and see if you recognize this person by face also. While they're on their way in, I might as well ask you a couple of other questions. Do you recall investigators being at that crime scene in addition to yourself, Dr. Henry Lee, Robert Shapiro, Sarah Kaplan?
And Mr. Pavlik. Yes, there were other people there, but I just don't recall.
Okay, I'm going to test your
So
memory.
if you're asking me if Mr. Diamond was there, I don't recall, I don't recognize him, but he could have been there for all I know.
Okay, was he, your understanding was, well, Mr. White's becoming an exhibit this afternoon. Do you recognize the gentleman in the glasses and the gray suit carrying the briefcase?
I do not.
Okay, thank you, Mr. White. You're going to get your exercise for the day. I told you to use a Polaroid. There were other individuals, the 2 that walked in here may have been at the crime scene, may not have been. You don't recall. Is that right?
That's correct. If they could have been there, but I don't recall, and I don't remember their names or whatever. I don't remember them at all. I remember the people I mentioned because I had multiple.
You did.
With them.
Okay, the people that you mentioned, Robert Shapiro, Sarah Kaplan, Dr. Lee, yourself, Mr. Pavlik, were all members of the quote-unquote, and I'm going to use this term very broadly, defense team, correct?
Yes.
And you cannot say the same about Stan White. You cannot say the same about Greg Diamond, correct?
They may have been members of this defense team. I just don't recognize them. I don't recognize their names.
Okay.
And I assume I did not have very much contact with them.
If you had multiple contacts with them, as you had with the other members of the defense team, kind of that inner circle, you would recall that, I'm assuming.
Yes, I think so.
Do you recall, take a look, this may be a little bit difficult for you to see, Dr. Bodden. No, I don't think I was going to actually use the photograph. I'll just do the photograph. All right. Your Honor, man?
Yes.
Mr. Ford, same photograph.
That's fine, thank you.
This is a little easier to see, Dr. Bodden. It's the same thing that's being displayed up on the overhead projector. Take a look at the photos A through D, A, B, C, and D on Quartz 2, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay, on Quartz 2, that's just been marked for purposes of this hearing. And tell me if you recognize what's depicted in those 4 photographs.
Yeah, I do recognize this as the interior of Mr. Spector's residence that I visited that night.
All right. Do you recall the area, and I'm going to point your attention to, or direct your attention to the area depicted most prominently in photograph D, as in dog. Do you recognize that area?
Yeah, I believe that's a foyer area, yes.
Do you see the back door, which appears to be the only part upper left that's lit? It's the very bottom of an open back door, it looks like.
An open door, a stoopway.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, and just to orient us, to the very right of that picture, bottom right, would be the base of like a statuary, something like a pillar.
Yeah, but that entrance, that way that you call the back way, is the entrance that I believe I came in.
Okay, adjacent to the motor court.
Yes.
And a big fountain out there.
Yes.
All right. The area that's dark wood paneled, do you recall Ms. Kaplan being at that area and finding something that was then subsequently passed around?
No.
Do you remember there being any discussions about an item of evidence that was passed among yourself, Mr. Pavlik, Dr. Lee?
No.
Do you remember any discussion about this item or an item being considered by you to be a tooth or tooth material or tooth-like material?
No.
Would you have been in a capacity to make that determination by sight?
No.
Why is that?
Because I'm not a forensic dentist, and I have not been asked in the past, and I don't have that expertise.
All right,
Dr. Lee might have that expertise, but I don't.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dr.
Lee, as a criminalist, would have that expertise if he had the proper equipment, but not me.
You said that you've been a physician for 47 years?
I've been a physician for 48 years and a forensic pathologist and medical examiner for 47 years.
And I'm not trying to date you, Dr. Bodden, but for probably 4, 5, 6 years before you became a licensed physician, you were probably in medical school before that?
A medical student, 4 years, and a resident at Bellevue Hospital for 4 years.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So substantial, to say the least, medical training. Is it your testimony that you can't recognize a tooth?
I can recognize an intact tooth,
okay,
but not a fragment of a tooth.
Okay. Would that hold true with things, other parts of the body that might be fragmented at a crime scene? For instance, a piece of acrylic?
Oh, acrylic, I'm not an expert in acrylic.
Okay, so
either.
You would not be able to opine about an acrylic nail, for instance?
No, but I could opine about pieces of human bone, for example, or human skin. There's little fragments I can opine on, but I'm just saying that acrylic and teeth and dental material that go into making teeth, I would hesitate to give an opinion. A whole tooth, no problem.
That seems like
bullshit,
You indicated
sir.
That goes, not to put too fine a point on it, but that goes back to the acrylic nail too. A whole nail you might be able to opine about.
Yes.
A cracked nail or
opine.
A piece of a nail, maybe not.
Well, not a piece of a nail.
Would you like to opine upon that?
Scene, not, but certainly when I was down at the autopsy, I could opine that a portion of Miss Clarkson's right thumb was broken off. A piece of acrylic was broken off the thumb. That's because the whole rest of it was there, but I couldn't identify to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty a fragment of acrylic nail at a scene.
You indicated that you went to the crime scene because that's an important function of a forensic pathologist, to get kind of a full view of an incident, correct?
Morning, man.
Well, that's a term of art, and the bottom line, this is not in front of the jury. I'm going to allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah, I go to death scenes tell us a great deal about the individual when the death occurs. Not as much as the autopsy does. My specialty is the autopsy. The scene can be helpful,
and
especially if it's a scene where the decedent lived. There's a whole lot. If it's a scene where a person dies who didn't live at the scene, it's less helpful.
All right. And one of the things that you indicated is that one of the helpful features of going to that scene, whatever it may be, whether we call it a death scene like Mr. Plourde would like to call it, or a crime scene, I'm sure that one of the reasons that you decided to go to that scene was to determine sort of what might have happened inside the foyer area where the body was recovered, yes?
No, I think that's sort of a given. The objection is overruled.
Is that yes?
Also, we're trying to determine whether everyone that was there is a proper holder of the privilege, so that's appropriate.
Could you repeat the question, please?
I doubt it. I'll try. Let's see, what did I ask?
You want it read back?
You know what? I hate to do that to reporters.
Okay.
I'll try to reframe the question. one of the things that's important as a forensic pathologist, I believe you indicated, was to go to a scene in order to determine what may or may not have happened in the scene, and that's what you did in the foyer area, correct?
Yes.
And you ultimately came to a conclusion that, in your opinion, that there was no struggle at this scene, correct?
Section 352 is to this hearing.
Your Honor,
It's overruled. I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Yeah, just so we get straight. No, I couldn't determine one way or another whether there was a struggle or not a struggle at the scene. I could tell a lot from the autopsy that I had already witnessed, but part of the reason a forensic pathologist goes to every scene that is possible is you don't know what you're going to find or you don't find.
All right,
Sometimes
Dr.
I go to a scene and I find a suicide note that nobody found, for example.
Okay.
So you don't know what you're going to find and what you don't find.
Okay, then maybe I got it wrong. Let me read a quick paragraph from a report that I got from Mr. Plourde. Tell me if you recognize this, Dr. Bodden. Ms. Clarkson, quote, Ms. Clarkson, 40 years old, was found dead by responding police officers in the early morning of February 3rd, 2003, seated in a chair in the foyer of Mr. Philip Spector's home. A gun was present on the floor near her feet. There was no evidence of a struggle. Did you write that?
That sounds right, but I'm referring to what the police found. When I was there, the gun, the body, the chair were gone. I'm quoting that what the police investigation indicated as I read it.
Okay, so you're not opining, and you have not concluded to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that there wasn't a struggle inside that home, correct?
Yeah. What
I
think we're getting beyond it.
Your Honor,
Tangentially, I understand you're going to, if he's formed opinions as to how independent he is, which in a way affects credibility, but I think under 352 we're going too far. If you want to make a showing.
If I make an offer of proof, Your Honor, it
Yes.
bears directly on an item of evidence that may or may not have been found, and whether or not this witness has a bias or an inherent motive to deny that an item of evidence was found because it doesn't comport with his report. If in fact a tooth was found or a fingernail, most
I understand where you're going. Very briefly, you may proceed.
Okay, very briefly.
Dude, Jackson's so good. They'll even be like, all right, maybe we'll stop, and then he'll like argue back, and you're like, all right, fine. I see what you're saying.
I want to try to get
It's
to this
crazy.
point as quickly as
He's so
possible.
good.
If in fact a tooth
He is a
material
wizard.
was found
I'm
or
gonna
a
keep that
fingernail
moniker
material
for him.
was found at the crime scene, that would evidence, at least be consistent with, a struggle at the location, correct?
No, and for the very reason you asked me, I had seen the autopsy. What you read to me was what I adopted from what the police investigation was, if I may.
That wasn't my question.
If I may.
Stop, but just a second. Both of you will stop. Thank you.
Whoa.
Allow him to finish his answer. It appears to be responsive in part, and then if you want to follow up, you may. You may proceed to answer the question.
And I was able to determine from the autopsy and coming back to the scene that once Lana Clarkson was shot, she suffered the gunshot wound, she became paralyzed and couldn't move and couldn't struggle and couldn't do anything. So just because there are blood spatters, if there were teeth, which I didn't see, if there were a fingernail fragment, in no way would indicate a struggle. It would just indicate, if it were true, I don't think it's true what you're telling me, but if those things were there, it would indicate the power of gunshot explosive gases pushing teeth and blood and tissue out. One of the things that comes out of the gun with the bullet is a huge amount of gases, and so that if a tooth were blown away, were found 6 feet away, or if a fragment of nail were found, or if blood were found 6 or 10 feet away, that would not indicate to me necessarily a struggle. That would just indicate to me the power of a gunshot wound.
If in fact, going back to the nail, if in fact a piece of a broken nail was found at the scene, that in and of itself is consistent with evidence of a struggle.
No. And
so
also,
it's inconsistent with evidence of a struggle?
Wait, first of all, just a second. The answer is no. Do you need to explain your answer?
Yes, please.
You may.
Because since I had seen the remaining portion of the fingernail at the autopsy, this tiny little bit of acrylic, it wasn't a fingernail, it was the acrylic top of the fingernail, was not present at the autopsy. And since it was a clean cut, of just a quarter-inch fragment or so, to me, it looked typical for a piece of fingernail, a portion of a nail that got caught when a gun is discharged. So when I looked at that autopsy, to my mind, she had lost that fragment of fingernail, was evidence of having her hand on the weapon and having the fingernail broken off in a, as I've seen in other cases where people have discharged a weapon.
So, doctor, you're testifying that you and your 48 years of experience can tell the difference between a broken fingernail that is a result of a gun jolting it loose versus snapping it in a bathroom door, tripping and catching oneself on a chair, catching it on a purse clasp. You can tell the difference.
Mr. Jackson, you're very correct. I can't tell just by looking at it,
right,
but by taking into account the circumstances, that there's no other injury to any hands or fingernails or any kind of bleeding or any kind of gunshot residues on the finger. I can tell that that broke off and what I assumed from what I gathered that she didn't have a broken fingernail when she was at the club because she was well coiffed all the time. That was consistent with coming off at the time that she died.
You assumed?
Yes, yeah.
You have no knowledge one way or the other when actually, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that nail may have broken, correct?
It was consistent with coming off at the time the gun went off.
You have no knowledge to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, doctor, when that nail was broken, do you?
In my opinion, taking all the circumstances, facts, and all the information I have, it's my opinion it came off at the time the gun was discharged from the basis of the fact that it's the only injury to her hands, and it was a kind of straight fracture, and there was no surrounding blood or gunshot residues or skin or breakage of fingernails as occurs if a struggle had been involved.
You have no knowledge to a reasonable degree of medical certainty.
Oh, sorry about that. Let me try to fix the audio real quick. Sarah?
When, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, exactly when that nail was broken, do you, doctor?
In my opinion...
Just wait, stop, no, just stop, please. The objection is sustained. I think for the purpose of this hearing, we are starting to go, I understand what you're trying to establish. I think you've gone as far as you can with it. For this purpose, you may move on.
Do you recall Stan White? And I know you don't recall the face. Let me ask it a different way. Do you recall an individual at the scene when you were at that foyer area, Dr. Bodden, mentioning the fact that he saw and identified a possible broken nail with a bullet strike mark on it?
Objection. Hearsay, also privilege.
Well, the question is, again, we're getting into if something was observed, where is it?
Well, it's not by this witness.
I understand that, but it certainly would be circumstantial if such a statement was made. This issue has been raised before. I'm going to allow it. You may answer the question. If you need it re-asked, we'll do it.
All I'm asking, doctor, is whether or not you recall someone making that statement.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And if he said that, I would have remembered it because it would be so contrary to the remaining fingernail that I had examined under a magnifying lens at the time of the autopsy earlier that morning.
Okay,
There's no way to get gunshot powder on a fragment of a nail and the rest of the nail be perfectly clean.
Okay.
So I would have remembered it if he said it and absolutely didn't say it.
You don't recall Stan White having a conversation with Dr. Henry Lee about a broken fingernail?
If he did, I didn't hear it.
Okay.
I didn't hear anything, and I didn't see anything that he raised in that regard.
And of course, if in fact there were a broken fingernail with a bullet strike mark at the scene, that would be inconsistent with your conclusions of a self-inflicted wound, correct?
No, I'll allow him to act just for the purpose that this, I have no idea if it's going anywhere. He can ask the question, he can opine and answer, and then we're going to move forward.
It would have been inconsistent with the autopsy findings,
okay.
Yes.
And your conclusions?
No, not necessarily, but it would be entirely inconsistent with the autopsy findings, period.
Okay. So you don't recall that conversation ever taking place?
Absolutely not. And if it had taken place, I would have remembered it because it was such an odd thing to say.
Just a moment.
You may.
I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Redirect.
Dr. Bodden, have you ever been accused of mishandling or secreting evidence at a death scene?
In my 47 years of experience, this is the first time I've ever been, that issue has been raised.
In fact, I want to direct your attention to the death scene involving a person by the name of Brando. You went to that death scene after the body was removed, and you actually found some evidence and you turned it over to the LAPD. Is that correct?
Yes. When Christian Brando died in Mulholland Drive, I was called by, actually, a week later by Marlon Brando because he was concerned that a bullet hadn't been found. And I came in and I did a second autopsy on the decedent and could not find the bullet. And I then went to the residence, the house that had been totally changed around. The police had left. The furniture that was bloody had been removed and all that. And in my examination, I found the bullet under a rug that had, and when I removed the bullet, there were a couple people who thought that, trying to figure out whether it's good or bad for the son. And the first thing I did is said, no matter what, we called the police immediately. We called, the sergeant came, got the bullet, even though it may have been to the, not to the help of the people I was working for. And I think if ever I would find evidence, it would be given immediately to the police.
I want to just finish up by asking you some follow-up questions to Mr. Jackson's questions regarding your report that he read from to you in his cross-examination of you. You authored a report in this case recently in the last couple of months. Is that correct?
Yes.
And in that report, you discussed your full review of this case, including your conclusion that Ms. Lana Clarkson.
That's a good question, Sarah. You know?
As to what was, I'm going to, you know, you sort of opened the door to that extent.
I brought out, if I may, I brought out specific, very specific conclusions concerning the fingernail based on what we've heard so far and what I expect will be part of this evidence. His ultimate conclusion is irrelevant for purposes of the hearing, except for the portion that goes to the fingernail itself.
I'll tell you why it's not, because you have raised an inference, at least as I understood it and what I believed you were trying to do, to show that he's come to a certain conclusion and he might tend to forget a conversation or do something with evidence to support that, and they have a right to show what his conclusion is and whether it's consistent or inconsistent. That's what you did, whether you meant to or not, and therefore I'm going to allow the question.
You came to the conclusion that Ms. Lana Clarkson died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Is that correct, Dr. Bodden?
Yes, sir.
And you based your conclusion on your attending the autopsy, what you observed there, your visit to the scene, as well as your review of the police reports and records regarding the investigation in this case. Is that correct?
And past medical history and lots of circumstances. Yes, sir.
Now, with reference to this nail issue that you were asked about, this acrylic nail, you took into consideration the facts and circumstances regarding the nail. Is that correct?
Yes.
Including your experience regarding self-inflicted wounds and whether or not nails can be broken in those circumstances. Is that true?
Yes.
Dr. Bodden, with reference to this particular case, Mr. Jackson brought up this point, is that back in 2003 you were paid for your services in coming to California and attending the autopsy. Were you paid for anything other than your independent judgment to give an opinion or opinions regarding the subject matters that you were retained for?
Well, I was retained by
Tiff, welcome in
retained me, and whether by Mr. Shapiro or by the district attorney's office, I always received some payment, and the payment had nothing to do with my opinion.
Thank you. And is that true in this particular case?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Your witness.
We do it a little different. Mr. Plord, you may recross if you want.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just one question. Your opinion wouldn't in any way, shape, form, or fashion be influenced by the fact that you're married to a member of the defense team, would it?
No, it would not.
Anything further?
Nothing further.
Excuse me, if I might.
If you want to consult with your fellow counsel, yes.
Dr. Bodden, one final question. Do you recognize this this blonde woman with curly hair wearing a bright
Yes, Miss Leslie Abramson. Yes, yes, sir.
And did you make contact with her when she was Mr. Spector's attorney?
Yes, very much.
Was that before your wife got involved in this case?
Yes.
And at that time you had the opinion that Lana Clarkson died of a self-inflicted wound. Is that correct?
My opinion was formed When Mr. Shapiro was the attorney, when Ms. Abramson was the attorney, absolutely, yes.
And that predated your wife's involvement in this case, is that correct?
Yes, it did.
And you recognize her, I take it, and you love her very much. Is
Yes, she's the one who was in Kirby.
Thank you.
Yes.
Recross?
Just one question. What's the date of your report, Dr. Bond?
I don't know if you gave it to me. It was a few months ago.
14 February 2007, correct?
Sounds right.
That's the first time you put your opinions.
That's Valentine's Day, isn't it?
That's the first time you put your opinions and conclusions into a report that's been turned over to the prosecution, correct?
I believe that was the first time I was asked to, yes.
And that was well after Ms. Linda Kinney Bodden was on this case, correct?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing further.
Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you.
He's excused from this hearing, not from the trial, obviously. Yes. What time do we need to get Mr. Diamond back and other... Ms. Levine?
Your Honor, may I ask if Mr. Shapiro may be excused?
Can be placed on call.
That would be fine.
We'll work out on, I mean, we can place everybody on call except the witnesses we know we're going to be here, Mr. Nassatir. Once we figure out who's coming back, how long, as long as it's no more than an hour, I'm happy to do that.
My only problem, Your Honor, is I'm going to be going into surgery tomorrow.
You're going into surgery?
Into surgery, yeah. Nothing big time.
Minor, okay. Well, you have, not that certainly lawyers are not fungible, but you do have partners. I'm sure one of them.
New lawyers for Spector just keep appearing out of the woodwork. This guy just popped up. I got surgery tomorrow. You've never seen me. I've never actually put anything on record on this case, but I have surgery tomorrow.
That is also true.
So we need to make arrangements for that. Okay, thank you. I hope indeed it is minor.
Sorry?
Your surgery, it's minor.
Yes,
okay, good. All right.
Your Honor, we're going to have some witnesses ordered back.
Let's bring Mr. Diamond and other witnesses in, and we can sort of plan out a schedule here.
We're going to keep on trucking. Hey, everybody. We see a lot of new names hanging and banging this morning. Oh, this has still got a couple of minutes on here, but thank y'all so much for being here. Hit the like if you have not. That really does help us out to try to get the growth going here at Murder Church. Keep this church growing. Keep it going. And, yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. And a bunch of people hanging on X, over 300 people over there. Thank you so much for the share, Kaylin. Got that out to a lot of fucking folks, and that's dope as hell. This morning has been insane.
No, if I do, it'll be at 9. I mean, we're looking at 9:30.
So can we start at 9:30?
9:30 would be. I think we have a long day.
Yeah, it's fine.
Good.
Your Honor,
Yes.
Mr. Noyes here.
The lineup gets more interesting by the moment.
I understand. Could we ask that Stan White and William Pavlik be ordered back for tomorrow at 9:30? I expect those to be the next witnesses in this hearing.
What about Mr. Diamond as well?
Mr. Diamond, we haven't finished the process.
All right, Mr. Diamond, you're ordered back at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Mr. Worksman, you're welcome if you want to appear with him. Thank you, and thank you for your appearance today. Mr. White is ordered back at 9:30 tomorrow.
I might have a problem. May I be heard, please?
Certainly.
I might have an appointment with a neurosurgeon. It's not life-threatening, but I can be paralyzed. I will be here, but if I have that appointment tomorrow, I'd like to be excused to go see him.
We'll work with you. Mr. White, we'll work with you. There's not a problem.
In this
trial, who else did you want ordered back?
Sarah Kaplan, perhaps at 11.
I swear they're just delaying to like... We can make this trial go for the rest of your life. You will never have to go to jail, sir. We will make it last for the rest of your existence on planet Earth.
Okay, if we know that's Ms. Kaplan, 11 o'clock?
We have another appearance.
Well, we'll have to work with it, okay? So I'd like to have you here at 11 if possible. If you need me to call someone, I'll be happy to do that. All right. Mr. Shapiro, you're on 1 hour's call, and we'll work. Good afternoon, Mr. Shapiro. 1 hour's call. Nice to see you. Thank you. 1 hour's call.
They all have my cell phone.
All right. Anybody else we need?
Bill Pavlik.
Mr. Pavlik? Where's Mr. Pavlik? There he is. Good afternoon, or yes, it is good afternoon. What time? How about 10 o'clock? 10 o'clock, Mr. Pavlik, tomorrow?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judge, we're going to start at 9:30?
Yeah, well, he's first. He's going to go on first because we're going to finish with him tomorrow morning. All right? Thank you.
We're going to move on to everyone's favorite.
All right,
everybody just coming in that missed this morning. Prepare for what's about to happen. This is part 2 of Gregory Diamond. Continues his testimony outside the presence of the jury. Okay. Dude, this morning was insane. This guy cannot give an answer at all. He wants to endlessly talk to his lawyer after every single question. He's trying to plead the fifth after every single question. It was crazy. It was insane. So let's go. Holy shit. Everyone, again, thanks so much for hanging out this morning. Let's go.
All right, we're back on the record. Counselor present. The witness is present. You have a different attorney today, sir?
Yes.
Could I have your appearance for the record, please?
Steve Olson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And present.
977.
Yes, thank you very much. Are we ready to proceed?
Yes.
All right, Your Honor. All right, you may proceed, whoever wishes.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I ask one question?
Objection, Your Honor. The witness should
I'll allow him to ask a question. We'll just say, yes, sir. What did you want to ask?
Yes, I wanted to ask, Your Honor, if I could make a statement.
No, sir, you may not. That's the answer to that.
There we
Witnesses do
go.
not make statements. You may proceed.
Goodness. Start him right there. Right freaking there. Judge Bruce Willis.
I'm telling you like it is, baby.
Look at him. Look at the look he's giving him right there. He's like, don't even do this shit today. Don't even come in here with that bullshit today, sir.
Listen to my question and please try to respond to the
Yeah,
question.
this judge rules.
Appreciate that.
This judge
Yesterday,
is amazing.
We ended by a discussion of how you got to the home of Mr. Spector back in February of 2003. And my first question is, other than the one time that you've talked about, did you ever go to Mr. Spector's home on any other occasion?
No.
After the occasion that you went to Mr. Spector's
He's feeling
home,
the heat already.
Did you ever work for Mr. Shapiro again on any other matters?
Morning, Crop Spouse.
And before you went to Mr. Spector's home, had you worked for Mr. Shapiro on other matters?
Yes.
Did you ever work for Mr. Shapiro on matters relating to the Spector case?
On matters relating to the Spector case?
Correct.
Yes.
After you went to the home?
Yes.
Before you went to the home, obviously you didn't. Is that correct?
Well, that's sort of a given. Well, actually, it's not. Excuse me, that's not necessarily.
In other words, between the time that the incident occurred, the death occurred, and the time you went to the home?
No.
Okay. And before you... Well, let me ask you this question. You were asked some questions about a telephone call that you made to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. Do you remember those questions you were asked yesterday?
The telephone call?
Yeah, you were asked questions about that yesterday.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe so, yes.
I want to ask you some additional questions
Sure.
about that telephone call.
Yes.
Did you make more than one call to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office?
No.
When you contacted the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office by telephone, where were you calling from?
My cell phone.
And so you would have a cell phone record of that date and time that you called, is that correct?
Probably.
Okay. What was the approximate date that you called the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office?
You know, I really don't recall. Ballpark. Probably no more than 4 weeks ago, no less than 2.
Okay, between 2 and 4 weeks ago, would that be fair?
That'd be pretty fair.
And you would actually have a record of it as a cell phone call, is that correct?
It would be.
Okay, and you have your cell phone records, I take it, available to you?
They're available.
Thank you. And Mr. Diamond, the date, so would it have been
Thanks,
in
Stevie. 12 months. It's crazy, dude.
April that you called?
Well then, yeah, that would, yeah, because...
sometime in April?
Sometime in April.
Okay. And that date, was it after 5 p.m.?
It was. It was in the evening. It was after business hours, I believe, yeah.
Okay. And when you called, did you get a voicemail or did you get a recording? How did you...
I believe, actually, I called and somebody else answered and I asked to speak to the district attorney. I believe I asked, district attorney handling the Spector case.
Okay. And the receptionist or whoever answered the phone transferred your call to somebody else?
Yes.
And how long did that take?
I really don't recall if I was patched twice. Maybe I was bounced to maybe 2 people. I think it was the first time I said, from what I recall, I called, spoke to one person, and they patched me through directly to the DA's office.
Okay, the DA's office.
Yes.
Did somebody say something to you in response to their being involved with the Spector case, somebody from the DA's office? You talked to somebody about what you were calling about, correct?
Yes.
And did that person identify himself by name or by position?
I believe I don't recall how they identified themselves. I'm sure it was, I believe it was their name.
Okay. Did that person say anything about him or her being involved in the Spector case?
No.
Okay.
We're talking about before I got patched through, right?
No.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry.
Once you got to the person you were intending to talk to.
Okay.
You wanted to talk to somebody in the DA's office who was involved in the Spector case.
Just 1 second, sir. You have a habit, and I understand a lot of witnesses do. When the attorney's asking you questions, you interrupt. The court reporter cannot take down 2 voices at the same time.
I apologize.
All right, thank you. You may proceed.
Yeah.
Eventually you talked to somebody, and you may have gone through a couple of people to get to that one person that you talked to.
Yes.
Okay. Was that person that you ultimately talked to about your information male or female?
Male.
Did that person identify him or himself by name?
From what I recall, it might have been by name.
Okay.
I apologize again. You're talking about the first person that I contact, the first person that picked up the phone. Is that correct?
Let's back up here. I don't want to know what the receptionist told you or what some person...
The ultimate person that I was trying to reach.
Okay, you ultimately had a conversation with somebody about the substance of what you were calling about, correct?
Yes.
Now, did you talk to the receptionist about that?
No.
Did you talk to anybody that transferred the call about the substance of what you wanted to talk to?
No.
You ultimately talked to one person about the substance of what you wanted to speak about, correct?
Yes.
And that person was a male, as I understand
Yes.
it, and may have given you a name, but you just don't recall the name.
No, that person was the person that did tell me who he was.
And who did he say he was?
It was Mr. Jackson.
Alan Jackson, this gentleman here, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you talked to him about information you had, is that correct?
What information? Well, I talked to him about something that
Okay,
yeah.
I don't want to know what you talked to him about, I just want to know that you did talk to him.
Yes, I did.
And
sure.
My next question is very simple. How long did you talk to Mr. Jackson?
Not very long.
Okay, give me your best estimate.
It seemed like maybe just maybe a couple minutes, maybe 3 minutes or so. That's from what I recall. I really don't remember exactly, but it feels like to me 3 minutes or so.
Okay, and your cell phone would have a record of the total
It
length
would be
of the
there.
call?
It could be 8 minutes. It could be...
Could be an hour. Could be an hour and a half. Could be 2 days.
Pretty short.
I could have talked to them for 2 days straight days.
Mr. Jackson give you any information, like let's say a name or a phone number or anything such as that?
No. No, he did not give me
No,
a name
yes,
or a phone
maybe.
number, no.
Okay. Did he tell you anything in that conversation about anybody contacting you at a later date or time regarding why you were calling?
Yes.
Okay. Did he talk to you about the Los Angeles Police Department calling you or contacting you in that phone call?
I don't recall if he said that, if it was going to be LAPD, the Los Angeles Police Department, is that what you said?
Yeah, LAPD or anybody else.
I don't recall. He did say that somebody would be contacting me.
Did he take any information from you, like a phone number, an address, or anything such as that?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you give him as far as your identifying information?
I did tell him that my name,
okay.
And I told him that I worked for Mr. Shapiro.
Okay, that you were employed by him.
Yeah, that
employed might not be the word I would use.
Okay. Through Mr. Shapiro, who you worked for. You made that statement to him.
Not that I necessarily worked for him.
Oh my God, you just said that. Oh my God!
In the case in some capacity. but I don't remember exactly what my words were to him, but I basically relayed to him that I was working on the case in some capacity then, originally in 2003.
Okay. And you related that to Mr. Jackson, and he asked you some questions about that. Isn't that true?
He asked me just general questions.
Okay, let's talk about all the questions that Mr. Jackson asked of you. What's the first question that he asked of you regarding your work on the Spector case in this telephone call in April of 2007?
From what I remember, I mean, he asked about me.
Okay, what did he ask about you?
He asked about my name, and I worked on the case. I was involved in Spector. I believe he might have, repeated that.
Okay.
I don't really recall anything else. I don't recall the exact words.
And did he ask you questions about your involvement in Spector and that your involvement was through attorney Robert Shapiro?
I don't remember what he said exactly.
Did you mention Robert Shapiro in your conversation with Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Okay. Did you tell him that anything about your current venture regarding Egnomatic Pictures?
No.
Did you say anything about what you were doing now as far as your employment or any ventures you were involved in, specifically that you were launching a television and film production company regarding Egnomatic Pictures with Tabitha Calero?
I did not mention that.
Okay, and let me ask you some foundational questions, sir. With reference to your current employment situation, you have launched a venture called Egnomatic Pictures. Is that correct?
It's enigmatic.
Enigmatic.
It's something that never materialized, and it was something that this case has interrupted the launch of this venture. And
did you ever issue press releases regarding that company that you just Enigmatic?
It was premature, and we have not completed. I really don't know exactly what the other person involved has done on that particular case. I mean, in that particular matter, as far as, getting it going and everything like that.
Let me ask you just a simple question.
Sure,
did you ever issue a press release regarding Enigmatic Pictures?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. When did you do that?
Not too long ago.
Okay, did you do it before or after you called the district attorney's office?
I don't recall.
Okay, do you have some record either on your computer or anywhere else regarding this press release?
I mean, was this guy threatened?
I'm sure there's some kind of record of it regarding some press release.
Okay, and is this venture, what type of business entity are you using for this venture? Is it a corporation, a partnership?
It has not materialized into that. It has been dropped and has not been necessarily, it's at a pause right now. It has not been launched as of yet the way it was supposed to because of this case.
When you contacted Mr. Jackson in this telephone call, and you only talked to him one time, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. I want to talk about before that telephone call. In other words, to your knowledge, did your venture, as you call it, that's been stopped, did you launch that before or after that telephone call?
I don't recall.
Okay. You would have records as to whether it was somewhere in your possession?
Yes, but my venture has been going on for 4 years. It's just a name that we would associate anything that's done under.
Okay, just so that we're clear
real
here.
Corporation.
Well, you're talking over each other again, please. All right.
Just so we're clear, the venture is with a Tabitha Calero, is that correct?
Yes.
Is there any other people involved in the venture other than yourself
No.
and this other person?
No.
Okay. Please wait till I finish my question, okay? Because the reporter's got to take
Absolutely.
it down. Okay.
I apologize.
Now, did you, prior to speaking with Mr. Jackson, did you
no.
ever contact anybody
I do not
regarding
recall.
the Spector case that was in any type of a news fact-gathering organizational capacity?
Yes.
Okay. Did you contact the Los Angeles Times?
Yes.
And did you speak with somebody from the Los Angeles Times? Who did you talk to?
I spoke to a reporter at the LA Times.
And you talked to him for how long?
I talked to her over the phone.
And did you talk to her on your cell phone?
Yes.
Do you have cell phone records of that conversation?
Yes.
And you talked to her for approximately how long?
I don't recall, but I think I had maybe I had more than one conversation with her over the phone. So it was more than one conversation.
Let's talk about the first conversation you had with the LA Times reporter. Do you know her name?
At this point, I really don't recall.
How long did you talk to her on the first occasion?
I don't recall how it came about that I spoke to her, how I first got in touch with the Times, the LA Times.
Okay, let me ask you a very simple question. You talked to a reporter from the LA Times.
I did, yeah.
And what was her name, if you know, first of all?
It was Ashley. Ashley, I don't remember. I really don't remember her name.
Okay.
But it's, I think it was Ashley.
Did she call you or did you call her?
You know, actually, she called me.
And
after I had attempted to call the LA Times.
The first time you made contact with the LA Times, did they call you or did you call them? The first time.
I'm the one who initiated the call.
Okay, let's talk about that. You initiated a call to the LA Times with your cell phone, correct?
Correct.
And did you talk to anybody on that occasion?
I don't recall how the initial conversation was with the LA Times.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Ultimately, I did wind up speaking with a reporter with regard to what I wanted to speak about.
Do you recall the reporter calling you back?
Yeah.
Okay, so you must have left your phone number, is that correct?
I must have, yes.
And did you leave your cell phone or some other phone?
It was the cell.
And did you talk to anybody the first time when you left your cell phone number about any substantive matters regarding anything that you had to say?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Did you leave a message, and what was your message?
Before speaking to the person of contact?
Yeah, when you called them and left your number, did you just call and say,
I really
my
don't
name is
recall.
so-and-so?
Wait, you're talking over each other. If you hear each other talking at the same time, you know that the reporter can't do it. So somebody has got to stop.
Sorry.
And Mr. Please, I'll try to do the same. I'll try, let me finish my question before you answer. Okay?
I will.
I'll try to not interrupt your answer.
Yes.
Okay, now.
I'm doing it right now while they're done. God.
To the LA Times, before you talked with Mr. Jackson, you left your phone number. That's one thing you did, correct?
Yeah, I must have left my phone number for her to have called me back. Yes, I did.
Did you leave any other information other than your phone number, like I want to talk to you about this or that, anything like that?
I probably did, because I wanted to speak to the right person.
Okay. Who was the right person?
Somebody in the right department, other than, you know.
Did you want to talk to somebody relating to the Spector case?
There were various people, now that I'm recalling, as far as with the LA Times. Ashley was the point of contact that I really spoke with. There were a couple other people as well that I spoke to also at the Times. Yeah, there were a couple other people.
I would like to know, very simply, when you first contacted them, when you left your number,
yeah.
What did you want to talk to them about? What message did you leave? I want to talk to them about your new projects, or did you want to talk to them about the Spector case? What did you want to talk about?
No, this had nothing to do with that. Did
it have to do with the Spector case?
No, it had to do with the Spector case. It had nothing to do with my projects.
Okay. Did you want to talk to him about the Spector case?
Yes.
And your work with Mr. Shapiro relating to the Spector case?
Yes.
Okay. And did you leave a message to that effect?
I don't know what kind of message I left, but I know it must have been something relating to the Spector case.
Okay, let me ask you this. When you first called the LA Times, did you want to talk to them about anything else other than the Spector case?
Maybe the show for CBS that you sold?
Okay. Now, when they called you back, you talked to a person. Somebody called you, correct?
Yeah.
How long was it from the time you left your message till the time they called you back?
I don't recall. It must not have been too long. I really don't know how long it took for them to call me back.
Was it like a week or 2 weeks, or was it a day?
I think it was under a week.
Under a week, okay. And you talked to somebody, do you remember it was a male or female that called you back?
On this occasion, yes.
Okay, what was it? The call back, male or female, first of all?
For this particular person at the LA Times, this one was a female. This was Ashley.
This was Ashley, okay. Now, you had a conversation with her where she called your cell phone. How long did that last? The whole conversation?
I don't recall the phone conversation. I was very brief and I didn't want to say much over the phone.
Okay. How long approximately? Give us your best estimate. I'm not trying to pin you down to the minute or the second.
I'm recalling the conversation. And this one was when I was in the car, so I do remember
This is our lives now.
her calling. And
welcome to
I just
Murder Purgatory.
Wanted to see if maybe we could meet.
Okay, you were trying to arrange a meeting. Did you tell her what subject matter you wanted to talk about? In other words, what was it? What did you tell her as far as subject matter? Did you say something like, "I want to talk to you about the Spector case"?
Yes.
And did you say that you were a law clerk or paralegal or something for Mr. Robert Shapiro back in 2003?
I don't recall what I said.
Okay. Did you say anything about who you had worked for and how you were involved in the Spector case?
I don't recall if I said it on the phone. I don't recall how I said any of those, but...
Did you talk about anything you knew about the Spector case in that phone call?
I really don't, at this present time, I really can't recall exactly the conversation as it was, but I do remember what I must have said was...
Don't speculate.
Okay, I really can't...
Just ask if you talked about the Spector case.
Right, so it would be the Spector case. I don't recall the rest of my conversation with her.
Okay, and how long approximately was that conversation? Your best estimate, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you don't know, whatever your
I don't
answer.
know.
Don't know. You have no idea.
It was shorter than longer. It was
but you would
minutes.
You would have cell phone records.
I do.
Now, did you mentioned you tried to arrange a meeting. Mm-hmm. Did you ever meet with anybody from the LA Times?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. When did that meeting occur?
I believe it occurred a day or two later.
Okay. And who did you meet with?
Her,
okay.
Ashley.
Now, between the time that she called you back and the time that you had this meeting, did you talk with her on the phone on any other occasions?
Yes.
Okay. When was the next phone call before the meeting?
For the meeting. I don't remember exactly. Maybe I was asking for directions. I don't remember the call, a call that might have taken place before the meeting. I don't recall. I really don't recall.
And your purpose for, well, when you talked to them to arrange the meeting, did you talk about any details that you wanted to convey to them?
Before I met?
Right.
I don't recall what I said.
Okay. Now, you went to a meeting. Where was the meeting at?
At LA Times building.
And you drove there on your own, is that correct?
No.
Okay, how'd you get there?
I drove with somebody.
Who'd you drive with?
I drove with my fiance.
And who is that?
Tabitha.
Okay, this person that is involved with this enigmatic pictures?
Yes.
Calero? Okay. And was she present at that meeting?
No.
When you drove there and you met, did you meet with just Ashley or did you meet with other individuals with the LA Times?
Just Ashley.
And when was this in relationship to the time that you talked to Mr. Jackson?
I think it was maybe 2-3 weeks before.
This would be?
Maybe something like, I really don't know the exact time,
okay.
But it was maybe, I really don't know exactly.
Okay.
If I don't know as far you're asking me specifically, how long?
If you know.
I do not know exactly.
Would it be, you said 2 to 3 weeks before, would that be your best estimate?
It's an estimate.
So would it be fair to say it was sometime in the month of March of 2007, approximately?
I really can't say exactly as far as without, I mean, I don't know exactly the dates.
Okay. I'm not asking you for the date. Can you give us a month?
It must have been, I guess if it was, it was before speaking to Mr. Jackson.
Okay.
So it must have been maybe 2-3 weeks approximately.
Very good.
Before.
Now, how long did that meeting take place? In other words, what?
It was about 45 minutes or so, something like that, an approximation.
And just you and the reporter, correct?
Yeah.
Did she identify herself as a reporter?
Yeah.
And
she did.
Did you bring anything to the meeting? Notes, records, pictures, anything such as that?
I don't recall.
Okay. Now, after that meeting, did you ever talk with anybody from the LA Times again?
I did talk to another person at the LA Times.
Who's the next person you talked with, and how was that communication facilitated?
I don't recall the name. It was before.
Before?
Speaking to Ashley.
Okay, I thought we had covered all of the before, but you're saying you talked to somebody else before this meeting?
That's right.
Okay. How did that conversation occur? In person or over the phone?
Now that I'm recalling, because this was all over the phone for these for this right here.
Okay.
This was a person at the LA Times.
Did you call them or did they call you?
I called them.
Okay. This person other than Ashley that you talked with?
Yeah.
Was it a reporter?
I think it was there were 2 other people.
Okay, so you've had 2 other conversations with LA Times people before the meeting, correct?
That's right.
Okay, and let me ask you this question. Were you seeking to, for whatever reason, get information in the newspaper?
Get information into the newspaper?
Yes.
Could you elaborate?
Did you want them to print your story, what you had to tell them?
I wanted the people to know something.
Okay. Now, before you meet, you talk with 2 other reporters. Do you know either of their names?
I don't recall their names.
First names, last names?
Not to my recollection.
Did you call them or did they call you?
I attempted to contact them.
And how did you get their names?
Thanks, Jersey Jen, for real.
From using
the
LA Times.
This is something.
You would read the newspaper and you would read the names of reporters who were reporting on the Spector case, and those are the people you attempted to call and contact. Is that correct, Mr. Diamond?
No.
Where would you get their names?
No, I guess I perused some of, I'm an LA Times reader.
Okay.
And I would get their names, not that they were necessarily reporting on the Spector case, but I just would get their names from somewhere in the paper.
Okay, you would see a reporter's name in the paper, a byline?
Yeah, there would be a name somewhere, either in like a magazine or one of the, areas in the paper.
Okay,
but I'm talking about the end of the paper. I'm talking about the credits.
Okay, so you would get some names and you contacted more than one, is that correct?
That's right.
In between your first call to the paper and your meeting with Ashley, correct?
That's right.
Okay, and you don't remember the names, either first or last, of the people that you called, is that correct?
Not at this point, I do not, right here.
Okay, but you would have cell phone records of the dates and times that you may have made some of these calls, is that true?
Absolutely.
And when you talked to the first person before the meeting with Ashley, how long was your conversation?
Wait, the first one before Ashley?
Yes.
Well, there's 2 other people before Ashley that I spoke to.
That's the first one of those 2 is that's my question.
The first person, I don't remember which one might have been the first person, just sitting here and telling you, but it was one was, from what I recall, was somebody who did editorials
Okay.
And one person who did West Magazine.
Okay, so the first person, the one that did editorials, male or female?
It was the first one was who did West Magazine. That was the first person.
Okay,
because
let's
she
talk about
referred me
that.
to the second.
Wait, he's answering, please.
I'm sorry.
All right. Who else did you talk to besides the person at West Magazine?
The person at West Magazine then gave me the name of somebody else in the editorial area that I might speak to.
Okay. So the West Magazine person, did you tell him give him any information as to who you were or what you were calling about?
From what I recall, I said my name and that I was I must have said that I can't say I must have, but I don't recall the exact conversation, but I know that I gave information saying that I worked on this Phil Spector. I was involved in the Phil Spector case in some capacity, and.
Did you say you were a law clerk or a paralegal?
I don't remember.
Okay. Did anybody ask you what your capacity was in either one of these phone calls?
On those two people before Ashley?
Yes.
I don't remember.
Trying to turn into a turtle right now and go inside of his shirt.
And did you tell her you worked as a law clerk?
Yes.
Okay. You worked
as an intern. I'm so sorry to interrupt. Sorry.
Okay. A law clerk and an intern for Mr. Spector through Mr. Shapiro?
No.
Just for Mr. Shapiro?
For Mr. Shapiro, an intern and then a law clerk for Mr. Shapiro.
And an intern is basically a volunteer law clerk that you're working to get credit through school and experience. Is that correct?
It can be, yes.
Okay. Your internship, how did it come about that you got an internship with Mr. Shapiro?
Can I, if I might just briefly interrupt, I would like to see Mr. Rosen, Mr. Plord, Mr. Dixon, Mr. Jackson, informally in chamber. I just want to get an overview of where we're going, sort of plan some time and things, and we'll be out with you. Why don't I see you in chambers?
He's like, dear God.
All right.
Oh, we
Back
still
on
have
the record, what I was doing with
30
counsel
minutes
was
left.
just trying
Yay.
to see what witnesses were going to be called and how long they were going to take, just trying to sort of get a roadmap for everything. With that in mind, everyone is back and present as before, and you may proceed.
Mr. Diamond, I apologize for the delay. I apologize for the inconvenience that you're being put through to testify here, but I wanted to ask you a couple of follow-up questions. And we were talking about your contact with the LA
For real.
Times.
He'd be a great politician.
If you could just tell us how many times you spoke with people at the LA Times, approximately.
Approximately, how many people have I spoken to?
At the LA Times, correct.
I spoke to 1, 2, 3.
Okay, and basically, to use the term or terms that...
I don't know why the sound's acting like that today. It's been terrible. Sorry about that. Again, thanks everyone for hanging out. Hey, if you're hanging out over on X, and if you're not following Publicly Buzzed, please do so. We do these every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Remember that. No matter where you are at in the world, because we have people all over watch, which is freaking sweet. And then I'm also maybe going to be doing more of these on Tuesdays if I don't have a story or something else I want to cover, so we can get through this trial, because this is a long one. I think a real life 6-monther. So...
Judge Fiddler was attempting to ask you, were trying to get them to print your story, essentially. Is that true?
No, I had some concerns that I wanted to address and get off my chest.
Okay. And were you trying to get them to publish your concerns that you wanted to get off your chest?
Well...
Sir, just don't go into the conversations or what you were trying to tell them. Just were you hoping that they would publish what you were telling them?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to leave the LA Times for a moment.
Pained look into the judge's face.
Any other contact that you had with any other news organizations or TV people before you spoke with Mr. Jackson on this date?
Right.
Anybody else other than LA Times people?
Yes.
What else?
The New York Times.
Okay. And how many times did you contact them?
I don't recall how many times I contacted them. I did speak to somebody.
Okay. You don't know how many times, but you spoke with somebody again. And did you call them or did they call you?
Originally, I called them. I
Okay.
initiated.
And you talked to them how many times?
At least a couple times.
Okay. And then anybody else other than the New York Times? Let's move off of the New York Times now to other news organizations before you spoke with Mr. Jackson.
Did I mention the smoking gun?
Not yet.
Okay, I don't know if that's...
You haven't mentioned literally anything yet. What do you mean if I mentioned the smoking gun? Like this is some kind of fucking bombshell.
No.
Okay, well,
That's
I
why
think
I
some
say it
people
like
would
that.
say it is.
Okay, absolutely.
So you spoke, before you spoke with Mr. Jackson, you talked to somebody with the smoking gun, is that correct?
I did.
And that person's name was Bastone, was it not?
I don't remember if that was exactly his name.
Okay. Did you call them or did they call you?
I called them.
Okay, and how did you get a hold of this? It's actually some type of a court-affiliated or court TV-affiliated organization, is that correct?
I was not aware of that, but
Okay.
okay, I'll take your word for it.
Okay. You contacted Smoking Gun, is that correct?
Yes.
And you talked to that person for about 45 minutes, did you not?
No, I don't think it was that long.
Okay. How long do you think it was? What's your best estimate?
Probably about, an estimate would be around 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. Did you get into any details of anything?
No.
Okay. So it was just kind of a contact phone call?
I had my concerns that I wanted to address to him, but I didn't give him any substantive information.
I see. Okay. Now, then you had your contact with Mr. Jackson. After you had your contact with Mr. Jackson, did you contact any news organizations or regarding your concerns?
I did.
And what other news organizations did you contact?
It was a return call.
And who was that from?
That was Court TV.
Okay.
This guy has a theme song.
Okay, and
I returned the... Oh, I apologize for going over you again.
I
It
hate
was a
you.
return
I
call.
hate you.
Somebody had called me.
And do you remember that person's name?
I believe it was Beth Karras.
Okay, and when was that?
That was quite recent. Actually, it was, I think it was early this week.
Okay.
It was Monday.
Today's Thursday, so we're talking about Monday?
Yes.
Okay. And how long did you talk with Ms. Karras?
Very briefly.
Did you... Now, let me ask you this. With reference to your work with Mr. Shapiro, when did you stop working with Mr. Shapiro? What year, what time period?
I worked for Mr. Shapiro after the Spector case. I worked for him longer. I came back to work for him again.
Okay.
That was clear.
Give me sort of the last time approximately you worked for Mr. Shapiro.
I'm so pained by that answer.
I know I worked for him again after the date of the bar. I don't have the dates exactly right in my mind as far as what dates are, but after that February bar time, I worked for him again because I'd already graduated from law school, and I just worked for him until the next bar exam came up.
Okay. Well, let me just ask you some general questions. When you say the February bar, was that the February of 2003 bar?
Yes. Yes, it was the February 2003 bar, and I worked after I studied, and after that date of the examination, I worked for him again up until the next bar, and then I worked for him again after that.
Okay. All right. So did you work for him in 2002, the year before, any time period at all? In other words, when you were, obviously you were still in law school?
While I was still in law school, I was working for him, yes.
Okay. And your capacity was some type of a law clerk or internship?
Yes.
Okay. And then in 03, you worked for him off and on, when you were not studying for the bar, you were working for him. Is that correct?
Yeah, in 03.
Okay. And then you studied for the bar but didn't take the February bar of 03. Is that true?
I didn't show up for it.
Okay. You signed up for it, correct?
Signed up for it.
Okay. And you felt you weren't going to
Thanks,
pass,
Charlotte.
so you just
Appreciate
didn't
that.
show up.
I didn't show up.
Okay. Because you felt you weren't prepared to take it. Isn't that true?
Because what I witnessed at the on that date had left some kind of impression in me.
Okay. So you studied for the summer bar, is that correct? The July bar?
Then it was, yeah, then I studied for the July bar.
Then you went back to work for Mr. Shapiro, correct?
Yeah, I took the bar, and then I worked back for him again, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And did you study for the bar again?
After that,
Yes.
that was it.
Okay. But did you work for Mr. Shapiro after you studied for the July bar?
Yeah, I did work for him again. From what I recall, yeah, I did work for him again for some period of time before the test results came out for that bar, which was the only one I took.
Okay. And when did you stop working in general? Give me a general time frame for Mr. Shapiro.
Without saying dates, I just know that it was just maybe weeks before the bar results for that July examination came out.
Okay.
Maybe it could be by like 1 to maybe 4 weeks. It was right before they came out.
Okay, fair enough. Now I want to shift the focus and kind of bring us current to 2007 again, and I want to talk a little bit about what happened after you talked with Mr. Jackson. You mentioned that you had talked with Los Angeles Police Department officials. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you call them or did they call you?
They called me.
Okay. And do you remember who contacted you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. What was that person's name?
Vic.
And did you meet with them or talk to them on the phone?
Excuse me. I talked to them on the phone first.
Okay. Did you meet with them in person at some point in time?
Yes, I did.
And where did you meet with them at?
We met at the Newport Beach Library.
Okay, and how did you get there?
I drove there.
Okay, you arranged a
teleported
meeting,
there,
or
sir.
a meeting was arranged?
Yeah.
And when you met with them, was it more than one person?
Yes.
And was it Vic? Did he have a last name?
I forget the I forget his last name.
Okay, and was there another person or individual with him?
Yes.
What was that person's name?
His name was Jay.
Okay, Vic and Jay. Do you know any last names?
I think it was a Jay Mobley, if I have to take, but
Okay.
I don't recall the last name, but I think it might have been Mobley.
Okay. Did they ask you questions during the course of that interview?
Yes.
Did they ask you questions about whether you were working for Mr. Shapiro or not?
Yes.
And did you reply to them in the affirmative that you had worked for Mr. Shapiro?
Well, during our conversations, we were kind of going over was I really working for him during the Spector trial or not, because I was studying for the bar.
Okay. And did they ask you questions about your work for Mr. Shapiro?
Like what kind of work I did for him?
Correct.
I don't recall if they asked that, necessarily what I did in the office.
Okay. Did they ask you whether you were an intern or a law clerk or both?
I told them that I was an intern and a law clerk.
Okay. Did that come up because you volunteered it or that they asked?
I don't recall.
Okay.
That.
Now, with reference to these detectives, how long did you speak with him, Mr. Mobley and this person named Vic? Just give me your best estimate as to the time.
Maybe 45 minutes to an hour or so.
Did they take notes?
I don't recall if they took notes.
Did they tape record the interview?
No.
Did you see either one of them have a pad of paper or anything taking notes of?
I know that there was, Jay did have a kind of one of those kind of LAPD notebook things with the zipper around it.
Okay, did he open it up?
I don't recall. I don't think he did.
Okay.
I don't recall if he did or not. I actually really don't recall if he was
This
writing.
time you really don't
didn't see him
recall.
writing
The other
any
times
notes.
you
He
actually
might have.
you
I
were
don't recall
bullshitting.
if they were taking
Got
notes
it.
at that meeting.
Did you give him any contact information like your name, address, phone number?
I gave them I don't think I ever gave them my address.
Okay, did you give them any contact information, like either...
Phone number.
Okay, did you see him write down the number somewhere?
No.
Okay,
I don't recall that.
so they basically asked for your phone number and they just, you didn't see him write it down, basically.
I don't remember him writing it down.
Okay. Now, you had this conversation with them. Did you ever meet with them or talk with them again, either in person or over the phone?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. When was the next time you had this contact with them?
I had the next time we actually spoke together in a conversation.
Yeah, like these Vic and Jay. We'll call them Vic and Jay. Did you ever meet with them again in person?
We spoke on the phone after that meeting.
Okay, so you never met with them in person. You had another phone conversation.
Well, first we met at the library.
Correct.
And then shortly after we spoke over the telephone.
Okay, and when you spoke over the telephone, was that with both Vic and Jay, or was that just with one or the other?
Jay.
Okay, and where were you at when that call was made?
I was driving.
And how long did that conversation take?
I was returning his call, and I spoke to him for a brief amount of time, maybe just a few minutes.
Okay. And then after that, did you ever talk with either one of them again?
Yes.
Okay. What was the next time you had a call from either one of those people?
I believe the next call was...
Holy shit, I think Phil, Tayo Toys, found this dude. Yeah, a demand writer working for the law offices of Gerald L. Marcus, personal injury attorney. You ready for this guy now? Thanks, Phil. There he is. There's our dude. My God. This guy. This fucking guy. Lord.
He called me, Jay called me, and...
Just when?
Shortly after, maybe a day or two.
Okay. And how long did that call take?
Not very long. There were various messages left from Vic and various messages returned.
Okay. So these were follow-up calls where they were calling you, and were they asking questions in these follow-up contacts?
It was mostly conversations regarding...
I want to know if they asked questions, not what was said. Did they ask questions?
Questions about the case?
I want to know whether they asked you any questions, whether they're about the case or not. I just want to know whether they asked you questions.
Yes.
Okay. And did you give answers to their questions?
Yes.
Okay. Other than the contacts with the LAPD that you just talked about, were there any other contacts with the LAPD?
No, those are the points of contact, yes.
Okay. Now, after you spoke with Mr. Jackson, were there any other news organizations that you talked with? And this would be after Mr. Jackson, not the ones before that we've already talked about.
There was the Court TV.
Okay. Anybody else?
Not that I recall. That's
so
it.
have we talked and discussed and identified all the contacts you made with media people already? In other words, the New York Times, the LA Times, the Court TV, the SmokingGun.com.
Yes, those are all accurate.
Okay.
That's what I can recall right now.
And no more that you can recall, the magazine person?
The LA Times.
Right. Okay. And LAPD.
LAPD.
Did you speak with any other law enforcement officials other than LAPD, excluding news organizations, etc.?
No.
Okay. Now, did you speak with a person by the name of Lori Levinson?
Yes.
Okay. When did that occur? When did that conversation occur?
Lori Levinson, we had a meeting at her office at the law school.
All of these words that I'm saying are new to me.
correct?
I'm
Yes.
using the
And,
English language
one
for
meeting
the
or two- or
first
more than
time
one?
ever.
That was one personal meeting.
Was it just you and Miss Levinson, or were there other people at the meeting?
There were other people at the meeting.
Who else was at the meeting?
Jay and Vic.
Okay, so the 2 LA police detectives and Miss Levinson and yourself, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we've have another in-person meeting with LAPD, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and when did that meeting occur approximately?
That occurred last week.
Okay. And did you...
Whoa.
Did the LAPD
bastard
detectives tell you about that meeting?
Yes.
Okay, did they drive you to that meeting?
No.
Did you meet everybody there?
At the meeting? Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And other than the LAPD detectives and Miss Levinson, was anybody else there other than yourself?
No. Not at the meeting.
Okay. I take it at the law school there were a lot of people there.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you ever meet with Miss Levinson or the LAPD after that time?
That was the last time. That was the last meeting I had in person with any of them.
Okay. And you talked to nobody else from law enforcement after that? And you didn't, and the only people you talked to was the Court TV people, correct?
No, over the phone I did.
Okay. After that meeting, did you talk with anybody over the phone?
Yes.
Who did you talk with?
I talked with Vic.
Okay, from the LAPD?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when Vic and Jay and Miss Levinson was there, did you see the detectives taking notes of your conversations?
I don't recall them ever taking any notes.
Okay.
All right, we'll take a brief recess. I'll admonish myself. All right.
God, we still have 10 minutes of this one.
All right, all parties and the witness are present as heretofore. You may proceed.
Mr. Diamond, I'm going to try to wrap this up in the next couple of minutes here. First of all, I wanted to ask you, you know today is Thursday, right? Correct?
Yes.
Okay, yesterday was Wednesday, and did you talk?
It took him, you know, today is Thursday. It's a trick question somehow.
To somebody yesterday with Court TV? Did
Yes.
you call somebody? Did you call somebody with Court TV on Monday, Ms. Beth Karras? Is that
Yes.
correct? So yesterday you called her. What time did you call her yesterday?
It was around before coming to court. It was a return call.
Okay.
And I called back. Apparently it was...
Did you call back before court or after court?
Oh, before.
Okay. Mr. Diamond, the DA is looking at a document here. I'm going to ask you to look at it to see if it refreshes your recollection as to when you issued your press release regarding your company. And ask you this, did your press release get put out over the internet? Did you do some type of internet?
Yes.
Okay. I want to have you look at this. Just look at it yourself and read it to tell me whether or not you recognize what it is and whether or not it helps you refresh your recollection at all.
Did you want to approach?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
You may.
Yes, I do recognize it.
Okay. Is it your press release?
It's the press release that they printed.
Okay. Could we have this marked next to Nora?
Sure. We'll make this courts 3 for this hearing. Thank you.
The judge seems super normal. Like, we're lucky we got this judge, honestly.
Referring to Court's Exhibit Number 3, Mr. Diamond, it has a date of April 13, 2007. Is that the approximate date that you issued this press release?
Earlier.
Okay. It says today's news. It starts off with that. Is that correct?
I don't recall what it's... go ahead and read it if you'd like.
It talks about Century City, April 13th, and then it goes on with the details of the press release?
Yes.
Okay, and did it get published right after you gave the press release? In other words, you released...
I believe it took some time.
What kind of time did it take?
I don't recall.
A day or two?
A few more, maybe.
Right. It names you and your company, Enigmatic, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the right pictures.
Enigmatic.
Okay. And it talks about
Took offense
your
to
scripts
that.
for legal
Sorry.
defense, cash cow, crime and passion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Other than yourself and Ms. Calero, is there anybody else involved in this company?
No.
And did this get published?
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Yes, sir, I'll allow you to make a brief inquiry, but what would it be?
That some of these projects that are on the list,
Yes, sir.
I'm involved in very confidential projects. I'm sure, as you know, in various the entertainment business. It's a big deal to let out information on what these shows are about for fear of other people doing them as well.
I understand, and we'll certainly try to work within those boundaries, but you will answer the questions. You may proceed.
Thank you. And I don't want to belabor this, but let me back up a little bit. You already testified yesterday that you sold some type of a program to CBS. Is that correct?
Yes,
That was 2004?
The show to CBS was sold. It was in 2004. Yes.
Who did you sell it to? The person at CBS. The name of the person, please.
It was the executive vice president, Gen Maynard.
Excuse me?
His name was Gen Maynard.
How do you spell his first name?
G-H-E-N space M-A-Y-N-A-R-D, and he's the executive VP. A senior executive VP.
He's a bit of a big fucking deal.
The name of that show, just the generic name, no one of those details.
The name of the show that was sold to CBS was entitled The Law Firm.
Okay.
The law firm. That's what we were trying to find earlier.
No, sir. I understand your concerns. We're not going to get into
That
intellectual
didn't get
property,
made.
but I believe the name, insofar as it's relevant to these proceedings, is appropriate.
Yes.
All right.
The name-
I understand your concerns.
Okay, now
What's another concern?
Who did the press release that you looked at that you recognized? Did you do it or did Ms. Calero do it?
I really don't recall.
Okay. Now, I want to finish up and I want to ask you, with reference to your call to Mr. Jackson, did you really get into any details with him or did you just basically trade information about contacts and so forth?
With Mr. Jackson?
Right.
We spoke about that somebody would be contacting me and that he said, okay, you're probably, I'll explain the conversation. Is this, what would you like me to do, digress?
No, now I am concerned that it may be getting into a potentially privileged area. So
No, I don't want to know that. I just want to know, did you give him any details of any information you had or did you just get contact information?
I didn't give him any details.
Okay. He didn't ask for any, you didn't give him any?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's true.
Okay. Very good. Those are all the questions I have at this time, although...
we won't excuse him. That's fine.
And I would like him to be on call here. Thank you.
Well, we'll see where we're at the conclusion of the hearing. I'm not going to excuse him. Perhaps we will place him on call. We'll see. In any event, people?
Just a couple of questions. Thank you, Your Honor. Going back to February 4th, 2003 at Phil Spector's house.
Yes.
Do you have an approximation as to when you left?
We were there pretty much all night. It must have been like 11 or maybe almost even midnight. I'd say around between 11 and 12 a.m. I mean 11 p.m. and 12 a.m.
All right, thank you. And who did you go with someone when you left? Did you travel back?
Yes, going back, Sarah Kaplan left earlier, so I went in Bob Shapiro's car back to the St. Regis to drop off Dr. Bodden.
Now, without telling us any substance of the conversation, did you, and you can answer this yes or no, have a conversation about the tooth that you saw that had been picked up? Just yes or no?
No.
Okay. In an answer to defense counsel here, I think he asked you why you called the LA Times reporter, and you said, I wanted people to know. Do you recall that question and answer?
To the LAPD officer?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
To the LA Times.
Oh, to the LA Times.
He asked you why you called, and you said, I wanted people to know.
Yes.
Is that the same reason you called the LADA's office? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. All right. At this point, unless you have something else on those.
Please
leave. You're not excused as a witness. We'll place you through your attorney if you wish on call. We'll give you at least 3 hours notice if we need you to come in. And my prior admonition about not discussing the case remains. You may step down.
Your Honor, could we have an order that he not destroy any of his telephone records?
Yes, you're to maintain all your cell phone records.
Thank you.
All right, you may step down. Thank you. Thank you for being here, counsel.
Your Honor, also maybe a further admonition that do not contact anybody about this until this hearing has been completed.
You know, I don't.
Other than his lawyer.
I've indicated he's not to discuss the case or the subject matter of his testimony. I think I only have so many powers, Mr. Rosen. I have to be very careful about that.
I understand. I'm just concerned because of his historical conduct in this matter.
Well, I would indicate if there was ever an attempt to leak privileged information, there would be severe consequences, and we'll just leave it at that. Without indicating there's been any, we'll just leave it at that.
May I just inquire,
yes,
just for scheduling purposes, about how long the court expects the hearing to take place?
Well, I think we've discussed in chambers it'll probably go into tomorrow at least. And are you planning on calling him at the conclusion?
Yes.
All right. I would say that we're probably looking at tomorrow then, if I had to guess. All right?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'm not going to be in the LA area.
You're going to remain, sir. Yeah, you're going to be on 3 hours call. Thank you. All right.
Your Honor, we'd like to call Mr. Pavlik out of order.
You're going nowheres for the next 6 months.
Yes, I've indicated in chambers that there are a lot of witnesses because of time considerations we're going to take out of order, and you may.
I think that was annoying as fuck. Jesus Christ.
You may.
That was insane. What a crazy day. That guy could return. All right, the next one's 30 minutes. I think we can probably bust another one out. Let's get that guy's taste out of our fucking mouths. I'm going to keep moving a little bit here. Defense investigative consultant Bill Pavlik takes the stand outside the presence of the jury. No jury today. I don't think they were there during Baden, if I'm not mistaken. Let's move on a little bit further down the line here. Let's knock another one out, guys. Thanks so much for hanging. I really appreciate it. If you have not hit the like yet, do so. That really does help us out here at Publicly Buzzed and helps get us in the algorithm. Everybody over on X, if you're not following, please do so. If you're hanging out, really appreciate that as well. And yeah, Murder Church, baby, rocking and rolling.
Please state your first and last name for the record.
Bill, common spelling, Pavlik, P as in Paul, A, V as in Victor, E, L as in Lincoln, I, C as in Charles.
Thank you. You can bring those up. That's all right. Okay.
Mr. Pavlik,
Mr. Jackson, are you taking? Okay, fine. All right.
Mr. Pavlik, what is your occupation, sir?
I'm a retired detective supervisor. I work as an investigative consultant.
Okay, and how long have you been doing that type of work?
As an investigative consultant?
Correct.
Approximately 17 years.
And prior to being a retired detective, what's your history as far as being a detective? What agency did you work for?
I worked for the Los Angeles Police Department.
Okay, were you a sworn officer?
Yes, sir. I've retired as a detective to a supervisor.
Okay, and I take it that you were trained and have some experience investigating matters?
Yes, sir.
Okay, writing reports, doing things of that nature?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now I want to just kind of cut right to the focus of this hearing, and that deals with a situation where a death scene was gone to by a number of people. Did you ever go to a death scene in Alhambra in February of 2003?
Yes, sir.
And did you go there at the request of a Mr. Robert Shapiro?
Yes, sir.
And did you observe events that occurred there during the time that you were present?
Yes, sir.
I want to just ask you, do you know a person by the name of Diamond?
Yes, I do.
Okay, was he there at the time?
Yes, he was.
And were you ever in his presence? Did you ever see somebody collect anything that was identified as a particle of a tooth or anything such as that?
No, absolutely not.
Did you ever see anybody holding a whitish type item and identify it as a tooth?
Absolutely not.
Specifically, did you see a Dr. Michael Bodden present at that scene?
Yes.
Did you ever see Dr. Bodden hold anything, a whitish type object, and identify it as a tooth?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you ever see him hold a white object and not say anything?
No, sir.
Did you ever take possession of any white type object for any reason?
No, I would not do that.
Okay, and did you put anything in your pocket that was collected from that scene?
No, absolutely not.
Do you know an attorney by the name of Sarah Kaplan?
Yes, I do.
Did you witness Sarah Kaplan pick up any type of object at that scene?
No, she would not do that.
Did you ever...
Calls for speculation, the last answer.
The latter portion is stricken, and you may re-ask the question, and then we'll get a direct response.
Okay. How do you know Sarah Kaplan?
We've done, I'm sorry. We've worked together since, I believe, 1992.
Okay. And did you see her at the Spector home on February 3rd of 2003?
Absolutely, yes.
And what was she doing as far as your observations of her?
She's part of the legal team.
Okay. And was she just watching what was occurring?
Yes, sir.
Was Dr. Lee essentially the one that was doing things?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever see Ms. Kaplan pick up anything at the scene?
No, sir.
Did you ever see Ms. Kaplan, whether she picked it up or not, did you ever see her hand anything to Dr. Bodden that she had in her possession?
No, sir.
Did you ever see Dr. Bodden examining anything, whether it was a white object or otherwise?
No, sir.
And you never put anything in your pocket or handled anything at that scene, is that correct?
No, sir.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
This is how it's supposed to go. The judge is like, hell.
Mr. Pavlik.
Little Jackson.
You indicated
Here,
that you were
little baby Jackson. Baby Ajax.
investigative consultant.
That is correct, yes, sir.
Is that the same thing as a private investigator?
No, I think the word private has a negative connotation. I'm not a private investigator.
Okay.
I work as a consultant.
Is there a licensure procedure for an investigative consultant here in California?
I worked as an investigative consultant when I was even on the department. There's no licensing required.
Is there a licensing requirement for a private investigator? And I don't mean to use a term that you find pejorative. That's the only term I've ever heard used for a private investigator.
Objection 352 is to this hearing.
Overruled.
Is there a licensing or licensure procedure for a private investigator here in California?
If you choose to do so, yes. If you want to work under somebody else's license, you can work under somebody else's license. And if you're working directly for attorneys, you don't need one.
Okay. Do you hold a private investigator's license?
As I told you, sir, no, I have no intentions.
Okay. Have you ever held that license?
No, I would never do it.
Okay. And sort of answered my question. Back in 2003, you were not a licensed private investigator back then either.
I never claimed I was.
No, I didn't ask you if you claimed you were. I'm just saying in 2003 you weren't either. Correct?
The whole issue is if I don't have it.
And you've never had one?
And I've never had one
Okay.
and never intend to have one.
Okay. So in 2003, once again, just very quickly, in 2003, there was no license that you were working under in your own name?
I was working directly for the law firm.
Okay. Which law firm?
For the Robert Shapiro's firm.
Okay. What was the name of that firm back in 2003?
I think it was Christensen Miller.
Okay. Do you still work for that firm?
I don't work directly for the firm. I work for a lot of different lawyers in a lot of different firms.
Could I use the term freelance? Is that an accurate term?
I wouldn't say freelance, but...
Contract employee? In other words, there might be other... you didn't work exclusively for Robert Shapiro or his firm?
That is correct.
Okay. And the same holds true today?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. How long had you been doing investigative consulting as of 2003, Mr. Pavlik?
I continue to do so since 2003.
Okay, that may have been an inartful way of asking that. As of 2003, let's take February of 2003, how long before that had you been an investigative consultant? How long had you been working in that capacity?
I retired in 1992. I would say 1989.
Okay, so even when you were on LAPD's department, I take it from that answer that the time period kind of overlapped.
Yes, sir.
You were an investigative consultant for the last 2 or 3 years that you were active with LAPD.
That is correct, yes, sir.
Okay. When did you first arrive at the scene? And I'm going to give you an address. You may not remember it, Mr. Pavlik. 1700 Grandview, does that sound right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is that what's known as the Pyrenees Castle?
Yes.
Mr. Spector's residence?
That is correct.
When did you first arrive? for the first time in February of 2003?
I believe on the 4th.
You weren't there during the day hours or evening hours of the 3rd?
Was Mr. Spector arrested on February the 3rd?
February 3rd, to give you a point of reference, yes, sir, he was.
I don't think we were there that specific evening. I think it was the next day. I may be wrong.
Okay. Did you, or I'll withdraw that. Let me ask a different question. How did you get to the scene, Mr. Pavlik?
I believe I drove my own car.
Okay. Did you have a passenger with you or anybody else from the defense team with you?
I don't believe so.
Once you arrived, who was at the location?
Personnel from the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department.
It was before, so I assume from that answer that it was before they had completely released the scene to the defense that you arrived?
Yes.
Okay. And were you there when the scene was, in fact, eventually released to the defense team?
Yes.
Were you part of that defense team?
Yes, sir.
About what time, Mr. Pavlik, was that scene turned over to y'all's custody?
I would say late in the afternoon, but I'm not certain.
What's funny? Oh.
We can't help who we are, Mr.
I try. If you don't speak Texan, I understand, Mr. Pavlik.
I apologize for my accent. That's okay.
Yeah, me too.
We'll get an interpreter if you need one.
Texas dictionary from witness stand.
And you know what? I got distracted. I didn't hear what time you said they turned the scene over to you.
I believe it was afternoon hours.
Okay. All right, once the scene was turned over, does that mean, Mr. Pavlik, or instead of taking it generically, let me ask about this particular incident. I assume that there was yellow tape, police tape, et cetera, while law enforcement had custody of the scene, and eventually that was all taken down, correct?
I was at the scene before Mr. Dixon arrived at the crime scene.
Okay.
There was still tape there.
Okay.
I don't believe there was tape at the castle.
Okay. So if in fact Mr. Dixon arrived on the 3rd, the daylight hours of the 3rd rather than or the evening hours of the 3rd rather than the 4th, your best estimate would be you arrived at some point on the 3rd for the first time, not the 4th, because you saw Mr. Dixon there.
Well, I didn't go inside. I monitored the crime scene as quickly as I could.
Okay.
And I was there, and the subsequent meeting came about afterwards.
Okay.
And it could have been 24 hours after the fact.
Okay, fair enough. Once the scene was turned over to you, let's talk about the 4th now, when the scene was actually turned over to the defense team. Who was at the location when Robert Shapiro got there? I don't know what other time reference to use.
A retired robbery homicide detective from the Los Angeles Police Department.
Do you recall his name, Mr. Pavlik?
I believe it's J. Romaine.
Okay.
Retired homicide detective from the Sheriff's Department, Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, by the name of Stanley White.
Okay.
Miss Sarah Kaplan.
Okay.
My son, Ante.
In what capacity was your son, Ante, at the location?
Working for me, taking orders for me, taking directions for me.
In an investigative capacity?
Depends on what you consider investigative.
Okay. Was he, well, let me ask it this way. Was Ante, your son, how old was he at the time, 2003?
24.
Was your son on your payroll, for lack of a better phrase?
Yes.
Okay. So he was working for you in an employment capacity, if not an investigative capacity, in an employment capacity?
Yes.
What were his duties assigned? Without telling me anything that was discussed, I don't want to know any conversations that took place. Generally, what did you assign him to do as far as duties were concerned?
Objection, that comes from the
No, the objection is overruled. We're trying to determine if anything was privileged, if people who are not entitled to be a part of the privilege holder's umbrella, so to speak, that may waive the entire privilege. So the district attorney is appropriate for him to inquire into this.
Do you have
Would you
a
repeat the question, please?
Of course, Mr. Pavlik. What was the employment capacity? What were his duties as your employee at the location?
His responsibility was to obtain rent equipment so that Dr. Lee and Dr. Bodden can conduct an effective forensic investigation at the scene.
Did he in fact rent such equipment?
Yes, he did.
And did he bring that equipment to the scene?
That was his job, yes.
And that was at your direction?
That was in my direction.
Do you remember, and I believe Mr. Plourde asked you this as well, do you remember a person you've listed off? You know what, I interrupted you, I'm sorry.
Yes, you did.
I did. Sorry about that. You got to your son, Ante Pavlik. Who else was at the scene?
Robert Shapiro, myself, Dr. Henry Lee, and I believe that's it.
Was there a Dr. Michael Bodden at the scene as well?
Yes.
Okay, and finally, what I started to ask you a second ago is Greg Diamond. Do you remember that name?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Do you remember, or did you know at that time in what capacity Mr. Diamond was at the scene?
Yes.
And what was that? What was your understanding?
He was part of the legal team.
How so?
Well, he worked directly for the firm.
Had you met him? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
He was there as a member of the team.
Did you talk to Mr. Diamond, or did you know Mr. Diamond before meeting him at this particular?
Yes, sir.
Did you know what he was engaged in, whether he was engaged in other activities during that time period in February, or do you know?
I don't understand your question.
Okay. In other words, was he a full-time employee, an attorney working for Robert Shapiro, or was he engaged in other activities and working part-time or something in between, or do you know?
He was going to law school. I believe he operated as a paralegal.
Okay.
In that capacity.
Do you know what his duties were? Again, I don't want you to tell him. I'm going to be very cautious about this, Mr. Pavlik. Do not repeat any phrases that you heard, any conversations that you heard based on this question. All I want to know is, do you know, as you sit here, what his duties were, Greg Diamond's duties were at the scene?
No.
Okay. When you first went into the scene, and I think you've listed 8 people, did everyone reconnoiter right in the foyer area? Is that where the kind of the central meeting point was?
I don't believe so.
Where were people, these 8 folks?
My son was outside. I was in and out, making sure that the perimeter was properly secured. And people were, it's a big place. They were all over on the stairs, above the stairs, in the foyer area.
Okay.
Did they commingle at some point in time, individually or collectively? I'm sure they did, but I can't go into that. I don't know.
Okay. So it wasn't like all 8 people moved around the location en masse as a group, correct?
That is correct.
So you were out of the presence of Sarah Kaplan for some time, yes or no?
In and out.
You were in and out of the presence of Robert Shapiro at times?
That is correct, yes, sir.
In and out of the presence of, and I'm just going to, instead of asking that question 8 different times, Dr. Lee, Dr. Bodden, Stan White, Jay Romaine, and your son?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. So there were activities that were conducted, or observations or conversations that you weren't necessarily privy to, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
How long were you at the location in total before you left that night or the next day or whenever it was that you left?
Till the very end.
Tell me what that means. I don't know if that's...
It would be within hours.
Okay. 2-3 hours?
2-3 hours.
Okay. So you actually went home and slept in your own bed that night. In other words, you didn't spend the night there investigating.
No, I slept in my wife's bed, but...
She'll be happy to hear that. Before coming here today, Mr. Pavlik, when were you notified, and by whom, of your request by the court to be here today? of the request by the court for you to be here today?
I knew something was wrong because the subpoenas were being attempted and served throughout all my properties.
Okay.
And at some point, I believe on the May 1st, at approximately 07:30 hours, I was personally served with the subpoena.
Okay. Once you were served with the subpoena to be here asking for your presence, have you had any conversation whatsoever about your potential testimony in this case or why you're being called here with anyone?
Oh, I'm sure I have, yes.
With whom? Could you tell us with whom you've had those conversations?
With my wife, with my son.
Is that the same son, Ante?
Yes.
Okay.
With my daughters. I left a message for the defense team to get a hold of them.
With whom did you leave that message?
With my old friend Bradley Brunon.
Did you ever speak with Brad Brunon?
I believe the following day.
And what was the nature of that discussion?
I'm going to object, Your Honor. That's privilege.
Well, it may or may not be. If it pertains to something as to whether or not it affects his testimony, that's not necessarily privileged. You're claiming a privilege and it may not exist at all.
Well, I'll stay out of it.
It may or may not. If you don't want to go there, that's fine.
I'll stay out of it.
Mr. Pavlik, without, and I'm going to ask for your cooperation with this question, I'm not asking for any information that may have governed conversations that took place at the scene among the defense team, okay? I'm going to give you kind of a long preface to this question.
Well, actually, just let me... Mr. Pavlik doesn't work for you, does he, Mr. Plord?
But the questioning might have been relating to when he was working for the defense.
That's not the way I understood the question. So if it's talking about present, then clearly it's not privilege at all.
Well,
if it goes back to something when he was working for Mr. Shapiro, then it well might be.
That's what I think I'm concerned with.
And that's what I'm clarifying.
All right.
I'm not asking you about conversations that took place at the scene among the defense team, okay? I'm asking you about a conversation or conversations that you may have had with Mr. Brunon about you coming to court today.
I understand.
Or yesterday, okay. What was the nature of your conversation with Mr. Brunon about coming to court today or yesterday?
He courteously responded to my phone call to let me know that he received it, at which time I informed him of the subpoena, and I believe I had to be here that day. That was yesterday.
Did he tell you why you were being called here?
By that time, I already knew. We didn't go into any conversation along the lines of why I'm here, or why my testimony is necessitated or requested.
How did you know? You said that by that time you already knew why you were being called in. How did you know why you were being called in?
Well, I know Mr. Dixon, and I know the case that I was involved in, and I know that the case is in progress, so it's not a shock as to why I would be subpoenaed.
In other words, what you're referring to, you never had a conversation with Mr. Dixon, did you?
I would not, if at all possible, no.
Okay. And you, in fact, did not discuss with anybody from the prosecution side your reasons for coming here today, correct?
Well, I have discussed somebody from the prosecution side.
Who is that?
Stanley White.
He's not on the prosecution side. He's a retired LA sheriff, correct?
Objection. Assumes the fact not in evidence, Your Honor.
No, I'm going to allow him to ask into that. You can go by redirect if you wish. Your objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. By the prosecution side, I'm talking about myself or Mr. Dixon, lawyers that work for the district attorney's office.
I was told that the other court ordered this hearing and that you guys had nothing to do with it.
That's right. And
that's why I was surprised at the way I was served the subpoenas.
That's right. And my question to you is, did you talk to Mr. Dixon or myself or anybody from my office? Okay, simple question. All right. Other than Mr. Brunon, who else, if anyone, did you discuss anything having to do with your potential testimony today with?
I made a phone call to my old friend Bob Shapiro's office to let him know of the subpoena.
And what did Robert Shapiro tell you?
He never responded. I saw him the following day.
Okay. And did you and Mr. Shapiro, as a matter of fact, was that yesterday?
Yes, sir.
You saw him here in the, I assume, the hallways?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you and Mr. Shapiro discuss anything having to do with why you two were here?
Oh, I'm sure we have.
Okay. Tell me what those discussions concerned.
Bob, what are you doing here? I've been subpoenaed. Bill, what are you doing here? I've been subpoenaed too. What's this about? We'll know when we get to testify.
Pretty straightforward conversation?
Short talk.
Okay.
We talked about previous business, families, the usual small talk.
Okay, so nothing about the substance of what you might be asked on direct or cross-examination, or what might be sought through your testimony?
No, the only person who talked about it was Stanley White.
Okay. And when was that conversation?
Yesterday and today.
Okay. Do you recall, while you indicated that you were in and out of the foyer area, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. While you were in or out of, while you were in the foyer area, do you recall, or did anyone in your presence manipulate any piece of physical evidence in that foyer area?
No, sir.
So nothing was touched in your presence by anyone that you recall?
Well, you used the word manipulate, and I have a problem with that.
Okay, well, let me see if I can clear your problem up.
Okay.
Let's assume for purposes of my question that manipulate means what I'm doing with my pen. I just touched it, moved it, and put it back. That's my definition for purposes of this question of manipulate. Did anyone manipulate any object, any physical item of evidence in your presence in the foyer area at any
Yes, sir.
time? Okay. Was that item, and I want to direct your attention to a specific description of an item, was anything that was manipulated, could it be reasonably described as something small and white?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you pick up any item, any small white item that could be potentially evidence from the floor of the foyer area?
No, sir.
Did you see anyone pick up a small white item from the foyer area or any other area adjacent to the foyer?
No, sir.
When I say foyer area, just so we have the right definitions, and we're working pretty well together on this, the foyer area, as I'm defining it, is the area adjacent to the staircase if you enter from the back and the fountains to your rear.
We're talking about the same area.
Okay, the
Yes.
staircase to your right, the chairs and the mirror to your
Yes, sir.
Sorry. The staircase to your left, chairs and mirror to your right.
Yes.
Okay. From that area, did you see anyone examine any small white object, either with a flashlight, getting on hands and knees, bending over at the waist, anything like that?
There were flashlights. There were people doing examinations, illuminating the scene, but I don't recall anybody getting on their knees.
Did you see any item of evidence that could be considered a small item of evidence that could be held in the hand, let's say, for instance, any item of evidence being passed among the folks at the crime scene, among the defense team, what we've discussed as the 8 folks of the defense team?
No, sir, absolutely not.
Or any of them, in other words, between 2 people or between 3 or something like that?
Absolutely not.
Did you hear any discussion? And I'm trying to focus your attention on my exact question. I don't want to hear about any other discussions. Just about a small object that could reasonably be described as a small white object. Did you hear any discussions among the defense team about a small white object that was recovered or potentially recovered at the scene?
At the time?
At that time?
No, sir.
Did you see Michael Bodden holding any object at any time in that foyer area?
Flashlight.
Okay.
He could have had something for examination purposes. I don't have any specific recall.
You're talking about tools.
Tools,
Okay.
yes.
Now let me focus your attention on items of potential evidence, and I'm using that in the broadest sense of the term. Any item that could reasonably be described as potential evidence, a small white item, did you see Dr. Bodden looking at any item like that he was holding in his hand?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you see Henry Lee look at or pick up any item of potential physical evidence at the scene?
No, sir.
Did you see him pick up, him being Dr. Lee, pick up or examine something that could be reasonably described as a carpet fiber?
Not at that time, although an issue involving a carpet was subsequently addressed.
Did he recover this? Did he recover anything that he described as a carpet fiber while you were there at the scene that day on the 4th?
No, sir.
at any point in time, did you hold in your hand, were you handed by anybody or pick up yourself, any item that could reasonably be described as a small white item that was found at the location in the foyer area?
No, sir.
Did you ever at any time put anything in your pocket that could reasonably be described as a small white object that was found or recovered from the foyer area?
As I've said it many times, no, sir.
Okay, thank you. I just needed to cover all our bases. Mr. Pavlik, I don't think I have anything further.
Thank you. Redirect.
Just real briefly, Mr. Pavlik. Your son was helping you by putting up lighting at the scene to help the other people working on the defense team, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And he was part of the defense team doing that work?
Absolutely.
And you were asked a number of questions about who you talked to before coming to court, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Brunon, et cetera. You mentioned Mr. White, but you didn't. You weren't asked to what you talked about with Mr. White. And I wanted to ask you this question. Did you converse with Mr. White yesterday as you're waiting to testify?
Yes.
And did he tell you about his 19 internal affairs complaints that he had when he was a
You know what, Mr. Plord? If that wasn't, I hope that was discussed. If it wasn't, you're very close to, all right.
I am told it was discussed.
Well, what's the relevance to this proceeding?
Because I think the people are going to call Mr. White as a witness who is an adverse witness to the defense, who we believe we've been given.
If his credibility is placed in question, the appropriate way is to cross-examine on that if it's otherwise admissible. I don't believe this is appropriate. The objection is sustained.
Thank you. I'll move to another area. Did you have a discussion with Mr. White, and if so, how long did that discussion take place?
It's now 11:45. I'd say I had the last discussion with him at, I would say, around 11:15, 11:20, or shortly after he was interviewed by Mr. Dixon.
Okay.
An interview that lasted approximately 20, 25 minutes.
Okay. Did he approach you to discuss this matter, or did you approach him?
He approached me.
Okay. Did he? That was today that you had this discussion?
Today, yes.
And did you have any discussions with him yesterday?
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Recross.
Just very briefly, I'm a little confused about something, Mr. Pavlik. I was very specific in my questions about you having any discussions whatsoever about potential testimony or anything like that from anybody from the defense side, anybody from the prosecution side. And you said the only person you've discussed anything having to do with this case. Let me just try that sentence again. I just got lost in the middle of my sentence. You indicated on direct examination that the only person with whom you have discussed anything substantively having to do with this case was Robert Shapiro, and it was limited to, why are you here? I was subpoenaed. Why are you here? I was subpoenaed too. That was it, correct? Wasn't that your testimony?
I think you're misinterpreting or misrepresenting my testimony.
Well, it was 10 minutes ago.
I believe that I testified that I talked to a prosecution witness by the name of Stanley White.
Correct. I just asked you about the prosecution side and the defense side, okay? I didn't ask you about alternative witnesses.
I consider Mr. White to be a prosecution side.
Oh, okay.
And a snitch.
And I've moved to strike.
Stricken.
Please admonish the witness
I'm going to admonish a lot of people. If people here want to play to the press, they can try it. And I'm going to call them on it each and every time. Don't do it. Let's move forward.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Pavlik, without getting into the substance of Mr. Plord's question, Mr. Plord asked you a question about the substance of your conversation with Mr. Stan White, correct?
Yes.
And you were about to, and he asked a leading question, and that leading question included certain information that Mr. Plord was seeking, correct?
Yes.
Did you tell Mr. Plord to ask you that question?
No, sir.
Did you have any discussions with Mr. Plord about the substance of that question?
Absolutely not.
Did you have any discussions with anyone from the defense team about the substance of that question?
Nobody here.
How would Mr. Plord know to ask you that question, Mr. Pavlik?
You'll have to ask him.
All right. That'll stay. That's fine.
Thank you.
Objection's overruled.
I have nothing. Well, I do have one other question. You indicated that something was moved, and I failed to ask you specifically what, Mr. Pavlik, was moved at the crime scene. I asked you kind of an open-ended question about things that may have been manipulated or moved at the crime scene, and you said, yes, there were things, and I failed to follow up on that. What were those items with that item?
I believe the chair.
Which chair?
The chair that was in the area.
Okay.
I also believe possibly the cabinet. There were some pictures on the...
Right at the very end, I'm going to get the sound messed up. Let me fix that real quick for you guys. Sorry about that. Again, thanks for hanging and banging today, my friends.
On the cabinet itself, and I think those may have been moved.
Do you know, and I may be taxing your memory one more time, Mr. Pavlik, there were originally 2 chairs in the foyer area. Were there 2 chairs when you went in?
I believe so, yes.
Which chair was moved? The one closest to the door or the one furthest from the door?
I think both.
Is that the only thing you were referring to when you said that items of, or physical items were manipulated or moved?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Recall. All right. Subject to recall, you may step down.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, that'll be fine.
See how long this next one is here.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Yes, Sarah Kaplan is being called.
Okay.
What?
Well, then, before the lunch hour, Stan White's been here, too, hoping to testify. You might recall he hasn't.
I'm trying to accommodate a lot of
I'm just going to ask you to order him back.
Oh, that'll be fine. That'll be fine.
Let's see here. The next one. Next one's not too long either, but we are going to wrap up. We'll start here next week. Sarah Kaplan, who was part of Spector's first defense team, takes the stand. Jesus Christ. Outside the presence of the jury. My Lord, when do we actually get to this freaking trial? Like, this thing is nuts. Week 4. Whoa. I'm going to have to call him episode 4 now that I've done episode 3 on a Tuesday, actually. But yeah, keep an eye out maybe for this Tuesday of doing another murder church. I'm liking this trial. It's spicy. Today was brutal with old dude, but it's an interesting one. So yeah, keep your eyes on all the socials for sure. Later today, I know that Jessica for Justice is going to be live streaming. I think she does the Kick parties. She hangs out on there and streams Love After Lockup. So make sure you're following her over on Kick. I think that should pop up all of her socials there. And here on YouTube as well. And Catch Justice on YouTube. And yeah, I know Jay's hanging out in here. Jay, hope you had a great weekend, dude. And I know you're back in the morning. Karen Reed trial is going into week 4, I think, at this point. Am I crazy? And still got quite a long time on it as well. So yeah, wow, what an awesome day. Appreciate everyone for coming through and hanging out. It's been I mean, today was something. I'm going to try to clip out some of the early stuff with old dude, man. I was losing my mind. I've never seen, that might be the most evasive witness I've ever seen. That was freaking insane. So yeah, everyone hanging out, really appreciate it. Again, have a great rest of your Sunday. Keep an eye on all the socials, whether that's X, whether that's the community on YouTube. And everyone that is on X watching this that came through. And then Kaylin, thank you for that giant share. That freaking rules. And that got a lot of new eyes through X here on Murder Church. You know, don't be shy to come over to the YouTube side of things. Jump in the chat every once in a while and sub up. But yeah, everyone in here, you guys fucking rule. Let's go. I'll see you all in the chats tomorrow. Later.
Pittsburgh.